Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 45,000, well, actually now 46,000 subscriber special. I was intending on doing this when we broke 40, but I happened to be out of town then. So I'm back here and we'll probably do a 50,000 YouTuber subscriber level special in terms of Q&A. I don't have a theme for this one like I've had in previous live streams, but the general thing is I'm just going to answer your questions. And I tend to get flooded with questions. So if you want to make sure yours get answered, feel free to use the super like that will move you up on the rankings of questions. Or if you're here as early enough, you'll probably get your questions answered as well. And so now that we've kind of got that out of the way, I am going to answer the first question I have here. Thoughts on Trump and cryptocurrency? Um, I have mixed views about President Trump. I generally think um, his first term's economic policies were pretty good. I do like the idea of lowering taxes and lowering regulations and all that. I think that the tariff negotiations, um, I'm really kind of unsure. I mean, I think that I'm generally against tariffs. If you want to watch my video about tariffs, I did two and a half hour live streams where I went all into my thoughts on tariffs. So I'm not going to really repeat that here. And they haven't really changed, but let's just hope they better work, because if they don't, you're going to have even more radical populist platform from the opposition 4 years from now. Um, and I'm not, the other thing I am concerned about when it comes to Trump's policies is what he is doing in terms of the international student visas and when it comes to Harvard. Like, I understand the gripe that he has with Harvard and protecting people that they maybe shouldn't be in terms of their identities. But at the same time, a lot of the US's greatest economic and cultural exports are its education system. And if we make it too unattractive for international students to come to the United States, it greatly reduces our cultural power. And it's part of the battle of winning the hearts and minds that the world wants to adopt our system and be part of the liberal national order. And part of that is educating the rest of the world's elites. And to take that away prematurely is kind of shooting yourself in the foot, I think, in terms of like a geopolitical power dynamic. But in general, yeah, I've been mostly supportive of President Trump's economic policies, and but there's some I agree with and some I disagree with. Crypto, I'm not really a particular fan of cryptocurrencies. I think they are fiat without a government behind them, and they are just speculative tokens that prey on financial nihilism and mimetic desire. Uh, I I've done videos about my further thoughts on crypto. I think you can make money trading it in the short term. Um, like, I just like, especially with technical analysis, but in terms of a long-term investment, it's not my cup of tea. And before I keep going, nothing on this is investment advice. Please do your own investment research or find a wealth manager or an advisor to help you manage your money. So I'm not going to go into specific trades where I'm bullish or bearish on Bitcoin or Ether or anything like that, because it's kind of one of the rules I have with these live streams, with channels. I don't go into specific trades and investments. The next question that I have is, have you done an MBA? No, I have not done an MBA. And my general view on MBAs is that if you need to switch jobs, like, MBAs can be useful. If your company pays for it to help you advance up the ladder, do it. Otherwise, I think the value there proposition is not that great. And if you are doing it without it being financed by some third party, what you should be doing is only going to the top 10 business schools in America. So basically anything UCLA, Anderson, or more on the prestige rankings. Next question is, What are some viable white collar career paths for me to pursue in my mid 20s? Um, College grad here, recently lost my job for 3 years of imports, a tariff uncertainty. Um, well, I mean, when it comes to specific situations, like on an individual level, um, you got to give me more details. And I recommend, if you want to talk to me, this you schedule a consultation. Um, I do take consultations with people. I do like an intro 15 minutes to talk to people. And if you need more time than that, I can do specific projects on a paid basis. Um, whether it's investment advisory, whether it's um, just general economic consulting or strategy advice or how to navigate the world from a entrepreneurship view or class hierarchy stuff, all that kind of thing. If you have specific questions for me, I do offer direct consultations with people. It's on a live. Given the lack of information you've sent me and the personal nature of it, it's probably not the best question to ask. And I just posted in the chat if you want a link to schedule a consultation with me for any purpose you would like. Um, Thoughts on running and scaling a low revenue per employee, non-capital intensive, non-consumer business in the Midwest? Thanks a lot. Um, well, I mean, what low revenue per employee, um, that's generally not a good sign because that means you have lack scale. But the rest not, but it really just depends on what your margins are, really, like, and how much labor costs are as a percentage of your um, cost of goods sold. I mean, that's not really enough detail for me to give you like a good answer, but generally non-capital intensive consumer business, service businesses can work out, but I need more details. I need to know what industry it is. And so I have assessed of the macroeconomic trends, but the Midwest is probably a good business to do something like that, just generally because you have a lower wage level and a lower rents and lower cost of living, which can help increase your margins. Um, yeah, let's see. Hello from Philly. Congrats with this goal. Thanks. It's too bad I couldn't meet you at the Philadelphia meetup we just had a couple weeks ago. That's where I was. I think when we broke 40,000, I was in the city of brotherly love. So that's a coincidence. Um, what's your thoughts on quant trading in the age of LLMs? Well, quant is going to be rapidly adopting and adapting. And LLMs are just going to be just the next weapon in the arsenal of quant traders. Uh, I think that a lot of quants are black boxes and they work until they don't. And it's very difficult to predict the changes in that. And a lot of quant is basically trying to hard code like technical in the sense of like technical analysis, technical, not just like random technological trends and algorithm of reading various headlines and other things to try to get small edges and high frequency. It's not really something I've ever been involved with. It's not my personal investment strategy, but if you find a good system, it can work. And I think AI and LLMs are just another tool in the toolbox for that. Um, yeah, my question relates to AI and automation. Do you have any predictions regarding automation for the skill of drawing blood? Um, I mean, I think there will be machines that do that kind of thing. I think you'll have. I think even like things like nurses are eventually going to be replaced by humanoid robots such as Mobile Aloha, and I'm going to be talking about more about that in a future interview I did with a noteworthy YouTuber on here that's going to come out in June. But yeah, I mean, I think it's at risk, but your main risk is not technological, it's social. It's like what generation, whether it's Gen X, millennials, or Z's or younger, is going to be the first one to be okay with a robot replacing a human nurse or robots and AI replacing doctors? Because you could see like there is AI that's out there, LMs that can do a better job than like a radiologist or a GP in a lot of corners of medicine. But even if they do it on an absolute basis, a lot of people are just going to not trust a robot to with their health. And when we cross that chasm, when people do, that's when you probably need to be worried. So just observe cultural attitudes on these kind of things. That would be my best bet. Um, Yeah. How do you feel about the future job market? I study a lot. I used to work in music, considering college for computer science, electronic engineering, but the prospects are all over the place. Yeah, this is a really difficult time for the job market in the sense that, on one hand, you're going to have a relatively um, stable demand for jobs because a lot of the boomers are going to be retiring. And even though they're not working, they're going to still demand goods and services from the economy. So there's an implicit demand for jobs and services in the economy. But on the other hand, AI is going to be replacing a lot of the entry level jobs, and robots are replacing a lot of the blue collar jobs. So it's kind of a tough dynamic there. But um, yeah, in terms of computer science, I think you got to do something evolving, like with the next steps of AI or automation, is where I would go. And you have to have an advanced enough level of the code that requires enough creativity that even if LLMs are primarily writing the source code, you need to be the one who actually understands what modifications need to be done. Um, like it's the same with like being a writer. Like you could probably write a book with LLMs today, but it would be a bad book if you didn't modify or make any changes to it. Like I've seen a lot of people all of a sudden become authors where they basically just do run an entire book as a, answers to questions of Chat GPT and then bind it together and publish it on Amazon. I mean, even though it does look like a book, I think people can still intuitively tell that there's something not very human with how it's written. And so, yeah, I think there'll still be room for coding, but I think it'll be more on the high end, higher level creativity side of things. Um, yeah, hello from Zimbabwe. Oh, interesting. I think you're the first person I think from Zimbabwe that I know of who watching this channel. Um, yeah, I'd like to go visit Victoria Falls one of these days. My friends who've gone there said it's pretty cool. Um, well, so what? And you also ask how AI taking over scare tactics on taking all the jobs. I don't think it's entirely in the short term. It might be scare tactics, but like 10 to 20 years out, it's definitely not scare tactics. It's happening, um, and you've already started to see in some corners of the economy, and entry level hiring is going to be weaker because of it. But I don't think it's really going to be realize the implication of this until you have like a real extended recession. That's when people are like, look, we have these bloated payrolls. We gotta do something because the revenues are down. How are we going to adapt and maintain our business while cutting into the bone? And that's when I think people will notice. Like, look at the comparison of like 2009 through 2012 when you had the GFC and had to cut a lot of jobs because a lot of companies lost revenue and needed to survive or to keep their earnings. Yet they needed to maintain the same level of production or close to it. And this is when Web 2.0 and like SaaS style soft automation software solutions became mainstream, was the early 2010s. And that's how the fortunes of companies like Salesforce were built on the back of the um, CRM, not CRM, the SaaSification of the economy. And I think we're going to have the LLM version of the SaaSification of the economy during the next extended recession. Can you do a video on Porfirio Rubiosa? Rubiosa, is that you're talking about? I don't really know. Can you who that is, or can you please provide me some more context? Thank you. Um, Next question I have is, what does Salesforce do? Well, Salesforce makes software as a service that helps. It's CRM, customer relationship management. It helps like salespeople and business development professionals keep track of all of their leads and what stage they are in the process. Salesforce isn't the only one that does it. There's other companies like Zoho and HubSpot that do similar things, but Salesforce is kind of better on the large enterprise level and is one of the more established players. So it kind of has difficult switching costs because people are kind of used to it. So that's kind of what it does. It just helps like it can automate a lot of the following up of prospective clients. It can give you automated reminders to contact certain people. It can make logs for you because a lot of industries, for compliance reasons, you need to log all your conversations and activities that you've been doing. And it's kind of a database that everything is in and is easily accessible. So it's useful for that. Like I use CRM for my company. I don't use Salesforce. I use one of their competitors, but it's very valuable and it does greatly increase your productivity, and that's why people have accredited so much value in the stock market to companies like Salesforce and CRM providers. Um, do you think that San Diego is a good place to move, given that money is not an issue? Um, Yeah, I think San Diego is a terrific place to move if money's not an issue. I love San Diego. It's my favorite of the big cities in America. So, like cities of 500,000 or more people, if I had to pick one to live in, it would be San Diego. San Diego kind of has the what's it called? Um, a suburban vibe to it. Like you can get like a normal like single family home there. Assuming it's expensive, but it's there. But you still have the urban downtown core you can go to if you want that kind of thing. Petco Park. I've never been to a game there. It's the only baseball stadium in California I have yet to go to in person, but I've heard it's a very cool experience. You have a lot of really fun like tourist type attractions like SeaWorld and the zoo and the safari park and the country houses in Balboa Park and Mission Bay. Like to get a boat or a jet ski going through around Fiesta Island on Mission Bay is great. The water's a little bit warmer than the core ocean, so I would. It's a very high quality life. The weather is good. It's got the best Mexican food in America. It's got good Italian food too, if you like that, and seafood. It's a very laid back culture. If you're like an entrepreneurial person who wants to make deals and make business happen, it's not maybe the best place, particularly in the financial industry. It's why I didn't move there when I had the choice to move to Southern California. I just decided between Orange County and San Diego, and I have family who live down in San Diego. But I ultimately chose Orange County because it's closer to LA if I need to. Um, I have more relatives here personally, and it's got more of a financial community. Like we have PIMCO, we have a few other major wealth management firms like around here. So I like, and I want to build a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building my company, and I think from that and that energy and the vibe of like actually trying to get things done, San Diego's not that. It's a kind of place you go more to relax or retire, unless you're working in biotech. Like if you're want to work in the biotech industry, yeah, San Diego is a great place to advance your career. But outside like defense, biotech, and tourism related things, you go there more to kick back after you've done your primary career or business ventures. Hopefully that helps. Um, okay, so I got a super chat. Thank you, Edwin. By the way, I loved your video on the rich neighborhoods of LATAM. I am Peruvian and work in finance in Lima 2 years. So if you need any help for this next video, let me know. Yeah, I will have contact you then. I've never been to Peru. I have some friends from Lima, but I'm not too familiar with like the modern old and new money dynamics in that area. The only other city I really know that well in Peru is Cusco, but that's kind of more just the gateway to Machu Picchu for tourists. And I would like to go do a hike of Machu Picchu one of these days. So I will eventually get myself down to Peru. Um, but yeah, thank you, Edwin. Next question. Could a third world country make itself a first world country? Well, they need to get their GDP per capita above $42,000 a year USD. Like that's that's kind of like the standard, really, if you wanted to do that. The question is, how do you get there? Um, First thing you need to do is you need to have a society that can have enough productivity that the marginal product of capital is greater than 42,000 a year. So you need to invest in industries that are scalable and provide actual like real productive growth, whether it's and you're gonna have to start with exports because if you're a developing country, you don't have enough local people in your service economy to afford high-end goods and services domestically. That's why the model for a lot of emerging market countries is to always start on the export side of things and then use the money that they bring in from exports to reinvest into the local economy and increase living standards. So, like, that's why I don't think you can build, unless if you have a very low population, a developed economy on tourism. So, like, any country's economy relies on tourism has an implicit ceiling because tourism is like the guy who in Michigan who asked the question before. It's low cost, low revenue per employee type businesses on a relative base, high fixed cost in terms of property, and like the jobs are not very well paid. Like they like the people who work in tourism for most of those jobs are relatively replaceable. So you need to have an industry that is more higher skilled than that and develop it intensely. That could be technology, that could be financial services, that can be what's it called, producing like a commodity that's particularly valuable, but then you get stuck with Dutch disease when you do that. So generally, it's like a tech, manufacturing, or financial services is how you move out. And then once you do have that money in from that core export, you use that first to reinvest in education. So you get the tertiary education rate up to developed countries. Like it's hard to be maintain being an emerging market country if you have a high quality education system and you're producing enough graduates that can create a developed service economy and generate enough income to be worthwhile to finance a service economy. Like this is how the US and the developed world went from truly developed economies post World War II is that economies to the GI Bill and increased automation manufacturing just freed up more people to go get educations and do higher skilled things. And that's why you have a lot of the more developed economies. The other thing too is you got to make sure that cost of living doesn't go up proportionately with wages. You need to have a very tight monetary policy, or at least one that's non-inflationary, so that you can have growth, but not all of the benefits being eaten away by inefficiencies from the government. And you also have to keep a welfare state in check so that you encourage personal savings, and also that and also to have incentives for people to be productive. Like I think that welfare states could work once you're already at a certain level of development, but before you're there and you try to put all these social safety nets prematurely, it will stagnate your economy. Um, so that's I think it's a combination of having a key export industry, using the proceeds of that to invest in education and urban development and just the basic things that raise the standard of living for a community. And then while you are advancing your society, you do policies to help maintain the cost of living and keeping it low enough that those gains in income are be able to be saved and reinvested. I mean, I'm not a development economist and I could be very wrong about this, but hopefully that answers their question. Um, yeah, so next one is Porfirio Rubiosa was a Dominican diplomat from the 50s who married several of the world's richest women. James Bond is allegedly about his life. Yeah, I think I might have read something about him on a Wikipedia page years ago, but I don't know enough to really say anything more substantive. All right. So, what do you think about the idea of companies like AMD and Nvidia propping up the U.S. stock market? Well, they kind of are. I mean, the big tech at its peak. It's not now because since Liberation Day, those have come off and haven't recovered as much as the rest of the market. But like at the beginning of 2025, you had um, the Magnificent Seven tech companies anywhere like of over 35%, I think, of the S&P 500, and you had them over half of the Nasdaq. So it does like if you're investing in those indexes, you are overly concentrated in those tech companies, whether you know it or not. I mean, there are ways you can manage that risk by buying more equal weighted indexes or just having just a more diversified portfolio. But yeah, that's I think they did prop up the market because the economy in 2023 was solid but not spectacular, and a lot of other industries were struggling. So, and if you look at the performance gap between the Mag 7 and everything else in 2023 and 2024. It basically answers your question. Okay, we got another from Oreo Hoodlum. Thank you for the super chat. I married into wealth, 10 million plus. My father-in-law is a successful business owner of some very blue collar work. I do cybersecurity. How do I not mess this up and take it further? Well, there's a few ways. One, again, some people said in the comment, stay loyal to your wife and maintain your family. Second, make sure that your wife, if she has siblings, gets along very well with her brothers or sisters. And if not, that you have an estate plan set up so they don't sue each other into oblivion and blow your estate, because that happens a lot. That's almost as destructive as divorce is the biggest destructor of family wealth. The second biggest destructor of family wealth is estate battles between siblings who do not like each other and fight and litigate out of spite. So if you can avoid those two, that's really good. The third thing is you have a competent investment and wealth management strategy. I don't know what you do for a living. Like if you work in finance or real estate, you might be able to do this on your own. But if not, you can work with like a qualified wealth manager who can help you manage those assets and diversify them in a way that you will be able to continue to stay in that class that you have entered in now. And if you want, I run a wealth management firm myself. If you want to talk to me more personally about what we can do for you, feel free to contact me directly either through my website or via email. But that's kind of the general answer to what's it called? Your question is mainly you need to make sure the family dynamics are good. And also the other thing, the factor in is concentration. How much of that wealth is concentrated in a privately held business that's owned by your father-in-law? Or how much of that is in liquid assets? Because that business might not be worth as much with a generational transfer. And you might want to explore if yourself, your wife, or any of your wife's siblings are not passionate about being in that blue collar business, about selling it while it still has value. That's another really kind of component to do as well. Next question. Do you think the middle class will continue to shrink in the next few decades? I don't know if you watched my video about the history of the middle class in America, but in the world, but I kind of go over the middle class is not shrinking to nothing. It's just mean reverting. Like I think the post-World War II era created an unusually high level of middle class. And I think it's just, we're going through a mean reversion process. So that's kind of my take on the middle class. The other thing is I think that AI has an interesting role. It's either going to eradicate the middle class or it's going to actually build the new generation of yeomen. Like when you had the yeoman farmers emerge as a part of the bubonic plague, when peasants got more buying power and bargaining power with population declines, they could build their own free independent farms. It really helped advance civilization to the next level. And I think AI and humanoid robots can do the same thing. Imagine if you can have unlimited white collar work available through LLMs and similar AI models, and you can have blue collar work run 24/7 for the same price as a car. We're going to have that soon. Like humanoid robots 2030 are going to be cheaper than buying luxury cars. And they might even be cheaper than Hondas by 2035. Whereas you could have LLMs handle a lot of the compliance and legal costs and accounting and other things that business used to have to do. So you could run, like as a single individual or a family, a super large scale business that would have normally taken tens of employees to do. And I think, somebody who's willing to apply themselves as entrepreneurial, the middle class opportunities are going to be wider than ever. But the question is that will people have the creativity, the work ethic, or the discipline to really take advantage of these opportunities? And the answer is, I honestly don't know. So I think it's one way or the other. I'm trying to be more on the optimistic side here. Like a lot of other finance YouTubers, I generally don't want to be a doomer. because I think there's a lot of doom message out there and there's enough doom scrolling going on. So I try to present a positive side, even if I don't 100% agree with the positive side at times. And I still generally think you also need to separate the future of your fate versus society. So even if there are social or cultural issues that are weakening society as a whole, that shouldn't really be able to stop your own personal successes. And I want you guys all to be personally successful, because if you do all become personally successful, you'll all become clients of my wealth management firm. So I actually have real skin in the game to help you guys advance your lives in a very distant way. Next one is, hey, been watching since 1.2K. Wow, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. You're one of the early people. Congrats on 45K. Oh, thank you very much. Like, I never thought the channel would ever get to 45K. Like, I made as a video when I was at about 1.5 or 1.2K subscribers. I made a video called "Why You Shouldn't Become a YouTuber," and the main premise of that video was like the economics of YouTube are so skewed to the right that 99% of you will never make more than $1,000 a month on it, or $10,000 a month on it. And the effort it takes to be seen was not worth it. And so you should only do YouTube if you have running as a hobby to share your ideas, or maybe if you have a core business and use it as a marketing arm. And I made as a kind of a halfway joking comment, if I ever broke 10,000 subscribers, I would do a tour. And then the old money versus the left supports the left video came out in September, and the channel really kind of took a life of its own. And I rapidly broke 10,000 subscribers. And so, you know what I did? I actually kept my promise and decided to do the Analyzing Finance with Nick tour. And we've gone to like over 10 cities so far across America. We've gone so far to New York, Philadelphia, Miami, Arizona, San Diego, Orange County multiple times, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. And it's been great meeting all you guys live. I've made friends in every city. I've been able to like just explore a lot of new places, or go back to places I haven't been in almost 10 years, and get a kind of a new perspective of like of America and the future of our economy just by going on this tour. And here I'm going to post a link to the video on why you shouldn't be a YouTuber that I made back then. And speaking of the tour, we have a lot of new stops coming for the tour. I've actually added, I'm going to Calgary. This is the next one. I'm heading off to Alberta. What's it called? Tomorrow for personal reasons, but I'll be having a fan meetup this Sunday in downtown Calgary. Another place where we are going is Chicago, which will be in a little over 2 weeks, Saturday, June 14th in Lincoln Park. So all of you Chicago land subscribers, I would love to see you there. And I'm posting the links to all of these in the live chat. And then I've added 2 new recent ones. This is brand new because I haven't even shared this with anybody yet, is that we are going to be having meetups in Cincinnati, Ohio on Sunday, August 29th, and Nashville, Tennessee on July 2nd. So if you're in Tennessee or Ohio or Kentucky area, I would love to see you guys in person. I'm doing a tour of kind of that part of the country for various reasons. I will also be back in Southern California with a meetup in Newport Beach on June 21st, and in Beverly Hills on July 11th. And then the last one of these I'm going to talk about before I get back to the main questions is Seattle. I'm going to be up in the Pacific Northwest on July 26th. So yeah, if you're in any of those cities, I'd love to see you. I'll talk more about the tour later in this live stream, but I don't want to just drag on a tour talk right now. What would you think would happen if people would reject AI outright? I think they'll be left behind. Italy tried to do that. They tried to ban ChatGPT when it first came out. And basically what happened there was they shortly had to overturn that ban because they they already could see the writing on the wall that they would be at a major competitive disadvantage, both economically and geopolitically, by doing so. So yeah, you'll just get left behind. Like the countries that don't embrace it will be the poorest countries in the world because because they're going to be outcompeted by companies and countries that do use it. And then here's the link for Cincinnati and Nashville. I just posted it in the thread. Next question is, after World War One and World War II, we had arguably lost two major theater wars, Vietnam and Operation Freedom. Do you think we can afford another major loss in world affairs economically? I don't know if Gulf War II in Iraq was really a loss. I mean, it was a loss financially, but like in terms of geopolitical outcome, I don't think it was entirely a failure. I mean, it was a waste of human life and a waste of money. I'm not really a fan of it, but it was kind of I'd like to see the argument of how that was just a loss if you take out like the human and financial costs. But I think that you would need a major war lost against a great power to really destroy the U.S. as the dominant power. They'd have to actually lose directly, or in a proxy war that's close enough that people see the writing on the wall. Like the Suez Crisis was kind of that moment for the British Empire, where when the U.S. said, "Look, you can't intervene to protect your interests in the Suez Canal anymore, Britain and France," and that was kind of the signal to the world that the British and the French Empire were done. I don't think we are close to that Suez Crisis yet for America, but that's what I need to see. Or some other country developing a gold-backed currency that outcompetes the U.S. dollar, which I don't really see that yet either. Yeah. And then the next question, really, as I'm posting in the event links for Southern California, I'm going to scroll up and check some of these. Best way to learn about new industries. I currently work in sales. I am interested in construction, business, or finance. What are the best ways to learn more? Well, you could go to industry-focused conferences and networking events. That kills two birds with one stone. You learn about what's going on that's on the cutting edge of that industry, while also meeting professionals who could be people you would do business with, whether you're vendors, your clients, colleagues. If you're looking for a job in there, maybe your employers. So, I mean, if you have the budget for it, going to like a high-end conference within your industry in your local city. I don't know if they're worth necessarily traveling to, but if you live near a major metropolitan area, they'll have one. Then or if there is like the national one that's close by, might be worth the trek. Other things, just there's a lot of books like finance as libraries worth of books and educational content. And there usually are how-to books really for any industry that you can read to get the basics of it as well. And then just again, meeting and getting to know other business owners in those niches also help. Next question is, and we got another super chat. Thank you, Laza92. Are there any middle-class oriented companies left and actually still care about product, company, and customer service, even if it costs them more? Yeah, there's a lot of small businesses. They're not going to be like major S&P 500 corporations. I guess Costco kind of is. But I would say that a lot of that stuff, like a lot of the margins for big companies are either serving the really high-end, ultra affluent category or the lowest common denominator. So I think you probably smaller boutique type retailers or companies like that provide quality service. Like for example, like I don't mean to pitch my own business necessarily, but my wealth management firm, like its advantage is not the fact that I have the biggest scale, and I not trying to get everybody to be my client, but it's more the fact that I have I try to emphasize very heavily personalization. And if you're a larger company, it's hard to do that on scale. And so like smaller businesses generally have more stake. Like that's one example. Like when you see a new restaurant, newer restaurants tend to have higher Yelp scores on average, assuming that they're halfway decent, is because a newer restaurant or smaller restaurant, emerging restaurant chain has a lot more skin in the game of making a quality product, because if they don't, they're going out of business. They don't have the brand power of a chain to stick around. Hopefully that answers your question. Next one. Not sure you saw that. Federal court just basically blocked all tariffs. Thoughts on what stocks might rip higher? Well, I have not seen that yet. So I wonder. I think the stock market is already trading above where it was at, or right near where it was at on Liberation Day. So, like, I don't think the market's pricing in a ton of bad news really on tariffs right now. But I mean, the question is that how much power will the federal court have to actually enforce that? Like, is Trump willing to go Andrew Jackson on us? Like, I think people need to study Trump. I think a good comparison is what happened with the Indian Removal Act in the 1830s, where the Cherokee were one of the 5 civilized tribes. They were they were pretty integrated into American society and created their own like American Southern style society, but with their tribe. And a lot of Southern whites wanted to kick them out because they wanted the land for themselves. And that they understood the legal system well enough, so they took it to court in the Supreme Court, and they won. And the Supreme Court, not just a federal judge, but the actual Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Cherokee that Andrew Jackson could not remove them and send them to Oklahoma. And you know what his response was? Let's see the court enforce that, and he kicked them out anyway. And I wonder at what point, because you're starting to see a lot of people in the MAGA camp who are advocating for this Andrew Jacksonian type of move to respond to a lot of these executive orders being blocked on a bunch of things. And tariff is the one issue that I think, and immigration are the 2 issues Trump's especially passionate about. So it might be the thing that really might get him to cross that Rubicon. And I think if he does, it does set a dangerous precedent. But the other side would argue, look, our society is so sclerotic and so corrupt from the deep state, and all of our branches of government are just become ineffective as a result. We have to break some things to make omelets. I'm not going to get into my opinion on that one way or the other, but that's really kind of the thing to watch on that more than the absolute effect of the tariff. How it's on Gary Stevenson. I get now asked about Gary Stevenson on every live stream. Now, he's the guy does Gary's Economics. I have not seen his debate. I know he has a background like in finance similar to me. He may be more in the institutional trading, like sales trading side. I'm not really sure his entire career background was as more of a buy side. But in general, he does have a fundamental financial knowledge, but he has a very different perspective. He advocates for wealth taxes and mass redistribution as policies as the only solution. And I think he's wrong about that. And I've talked about that in some of my recent videos about class, where I've elaborated more on the flaws of this, the end game of populism video, which I will copy a link here. I go into maybe some of the concerns I have with the ideas and my solution as an alternative, which I released a video recently about called How Deflation Solves Class Conflict. I don't think you can solve the cost of living crisis and the struggles in the middle class with redistributionist policies and subsidies and trying to increase income and demand, because all that does is that it increases more demand for goods without production proportionately, which could be either inflationary, or it creates the social media envy problem where they're like, look, even if you do have everybody universal basic income, who gets to live in Newport Beach? Who gets to have the yacht in Florida? Who gets to play golf all day at Torrey Pines? Like, not everybody. There's not it's not humanly possible to divide that. So there are going to be people who are mad, and that's not going to be solved with a UBI. And that's assuming UBI doesn't inflate away, like everything, all the gains from UBI get inflated away just through more money chasing fewer goods. I mean, I'd like to, if Gary was interested, and I would do a debate with him and I would chat with him. I'd like to learn more about his perspective. I think it'd be a great conversation. What is your opinion on why Brazil has such a high interest rate. Well, because they don't have a good track record of keeping inflation in check. And so I don't know what the exact Brazilian inflation rate is right now, but let me look it up just so I don't sound like completely uninformed here. But the Brazil inflation rate is about 5.5%. And that's not low enough that people are going to have confidence for monetary easing. Like Brazil's interest rates are 14%, and they're rising in because there is a risk that whether to the tariffs or changing trade flows as a result of all that's going on in the world, that inflation could increase. And they are run by a populist government that, if lower rates would happen, would use that to justify certain deficit spending that would just create an inflation spiral. And generally, with Latin Americans' track record, especially a country like Brazil, they're not given the benefit of the doubt. So that explains why interest rates are high there. Um, yeah. Do you think Trump will end tax for citizen or abroad? If so, what will happen with migration outside the US? I mean, I don't think he will because it's not politically very popular. Like, what percentage of Americans are wealthy expats who live overseas? They're not really a sizable voting bloc. And since they're not living in the country, they're not really a sizable part of the donor class either. So if you have a limited amount of things that you can cut in terms of taxes, why would you use your political capital on expats? I think it's fundamentally unfair that expats are taxed the way they are, but I understand the politics behind it, which is why I don't think it's going to change very much. Um, as for flows, I think you'd see more like digital nomad types or entrepreneurs or retired people with a lot of assets move out there. And I think the game of tax arbitrage would really go into full swing because like there's certain places like Dubai, Uruguay, Zug Canton in Switzerland, Monaco, the Cayman Islands, which are not appealing to Americans because of this American tax policy. So I think you'd see more flow to those places, especially if America becomes increasingly more populist and has a more left-wing swing in populism, which will be enough to scare a lot away. Um, Next question, Nick. Love your videos. Do you attend the TLM? No, I mean I've gone to like 3 or 4 TLM masses in my life. Um, but I prefer the Novus Ordo personally. Like I just don't. It's hard for me to connect to the service when it's in a language I don't understand. I think there is a good hybrid, but the idea that you use like the stuff like the Sanctus and the Hosanna in the highest and like the Lamb of God and all those, like that you apparently know what they are and have those in Latin, but everything else in English could be a good balance. But yeah, it's not. I'm not a fan of TLM personally. Um, Brian says, "Howdy, fellow members. Sub to Nick. Yeah, I've got a good membership community now. The main benefit of being a member is that you get videos usually 24 to 48 hours earlier for the lower tier. You get priority responses to comments. And then I have a bonus video tier, or at least like 1 or 2 videos a month of bonus content, which is interesting ideas, but it's not purely finance related. So that's why I generally put those behind the bonus paywall. They're a little bit too edgy for the main channel. So that's the benefits of being a member. What are your thoughts on central banking? Uh, the thing is that's a very vague question. I generally don't like central banking as a principle, but in a world that the choice is between central banking and direct control of money supply by Congress or the equivalent of that in other countries, I would prefer an independent central bank over Congress regulating the monetary policy. But yeah, and central banks really the trade is essentially, do you prefer utility or the purchasing power of your currency? Like if you want smooth mild recessions and not like before the Fed, then you need a central bank to smooth out economy. But if you don't want that, all right. It says my connection is unstable. Do you guys still hear? Can you guys still hear me? I think I'm back now. All right. Am I back? Please write in the comments, somebody, because I think I had an issue with um, an unstable connection for a second. Um, so yeah. So assuming I'm still here and I'm still live, um, yeah, I will get back to it. My theory on that really is that um, let me is that I think that the downside of no central bank is that you have economic panics that can just wipe out people's lives and all their investments and all their jobs and savings, and can cause like just a lot of collateral damage. Whereas if you have central banks, the risk is inflation, because the government is going to be tempted to abuse the power of the purse. And even if it's independent central bank like the Fed, like the fears of preserving employment and the sticky wage phenomenon is always going to have people err towards inflation. So yeah, that's kind of the answer to that. Also, the other question I have is, what are I see a bunch of like crowns in the comments. What are those exactly? Is that like a new feature in YouTube that I don't really know about? Um, please, somebody explain that in the comments, because I'm just kind of curious. That now I know there's a lot of questions that I've missed out on, so I want to go and run through some of these. So give me a second. And while I am looking for these older questions, I will mention the last part of my tour this summer. I am going to be actually, for my European audience, going to be having a lot stops in the European continent for the Analyzing Finance and Nick tour around Labor Day in late August and early September. Before I head to Europe, we're going to have 2 stops in the Central Valley in Fresno on August 20th, and Santa Cruz, California. So it's my second stop in the Bay Area on Saturday, August 23rd. And then we are going to be having what's it called? 4 stops in Europe. And I'm saying these in advance just because people plan their European vacations in advance or etc. But we're going to have a meetup in Amsterdam on August 30th, Zurich, Switzerland, September 2nd, Geneva, Switzerland on September 3rd, and Rome, Italy on September 5th, which is going to be kind of in line with Catholic Jubilee, which is why I'm going to Rome. So if you want to do your Jubilee privilege with fellow finance fans who also are Catholic, meet me for the Finalizing Finance Jubilee in Rome. Now that I've said that out of the way, and I'll post the links as we chat, I got some more questions. What's it called? If you had to choose one option your whole life for your son, be 5'1", but Bezos type money and status, or broke but 6'5" with male model looks. I mean, I'd probably choose the first one, because I think that physical attraction for men is not as important as it is for women. So that would be the tiebreaker. And you can fix a lot of those problems with enough money and social status. So that would be how I would do that. And also depends, like, other question is, if number 2 is broke, but you can have an opportunity to work, or is it and improve yourself, then maybe number 2 might be the answer. But if you have to be broke your entire life, number 1 is the better answer, if you know what I mean. Let's see. Now, let's go scroll up to some of these questions that I saw here. Polygamous marriage as a form of wealth protection and wealth generation. No, I don't think that. I think that would actually be destructive for wealth, for because you'd have more divisions in the estate, and also you would have very. I don't think those family dynamics often are healthy necessarily. Um, are you from old money? No, I'm not from old money. I have some ancestors who were from old money, but by the time I was born, it was all gone. So the answer is no to your question. Um, it's 45,000 subs. What class is this YouTube channel? What do you mean by class for a YouTube channel? Like, I guess we are in the independent professional class right now, moving up on our way to the counter elite. That's my answer. I always wondered why stocks like Procter and Gamble and WD-40 are allowed to trade at such high P's. I mean, there's not really something being allowed or not allowed for trading multiples. Um, so like, yeah, my view on that is really just people perceive their earnings to be safe. Like you only get high multiples for two reasons in the market. It's either one, you're growing a lot, your earnings are growing rapidly, so as a result, you get a higher multiple because the stock's going to grow into it. Or the second, I don't think that the second answer is that people think you're safe. Like the demand for your product is so stable that you don't really get the same kind of downswings as other stocks do in a recession or a depression. Like example would be Procter and Gamble. Are people going to stop buying their Crest toothpaste when you have economic recession? And the market is betting on the answer being no. So yeah, that's the answer. Let's see. I think I missed some other questions up here, but yeah. What are your thoughts on legalization of cannabis? How does that affect the world in your eyes? It definitely affected the labor pool. Well, it changed a lot of voting habits. Like it's kind of what tipped Colorado to being a full blue state. Um, it did attract a certain demographic of millennials to move to certain parts of the country, particularly Colorado and Washington State. It also is I think that you have to look at really the social costs versus the economic benefit. And I saw a study in Washington State that the tax revenue generated from it is only about a fourth of what the increased social costs of it in terms of like increased DUIs, like reduced productivity, other like social ills that the government has to pay for through higher social services. And so I don't really think governments are actually profiting that much from it as they hoped. And I don't know if it was the right decision, really, when I look back at it. What do you think of the book Arete? I haven't finished it yet. It was recommended to me by my brother. It's a good book. It's kind of like a bunch of like little articles and short stories, and it's not really like a single narrative. But yeah, Brian Johnson is has a lot of interesting content. Um, let's see. Well, are you familiar with click theory? Are you talking about like high school cliques and prison cliques and the dynamics in those socially, or is there something more to it? So um, let me know about the answer to that question, because I'm not really clear on what you're asking here, to be quite honest. Another thing before answer questions I'd like to mention is I want to ask is who do you think would be a good person to do a YouTube collaboration with for the channel? Um, with the size getting bigger, I remember back when I went to VidCon the first time, and I was a very small channel, less than 1,000. A lot of the people who I want to do collaborations said come back at 50K, and now I'm getting close to 50K. So maybe I'd be open to more collaborations with people who I find interesting. And if you have suggestions on that, let me know. Next question. Any plans of speaking in the Minnesota or the Midwest? Well, I'm going to Chicago in 2 weeks and Cincinnati at the end of the month. So those are going to be my two times in the Midwestern United States. Um, let's see. Um, is everything between cutting edge tech and raw resources just going to go away? No, absolutely not. There's plenty of. I think the thing that's more stable than those is human interaction type services or things that the main value in it is just the personalized touch or human element, whether it's business relationships done through sales, whether it's like therapists, like you could theoretically do AI for a lot of those things, but the hollow feeling of it, I think, from an emotional state, will keep a lot of those type of jobs stable. Um, let's see. Given your fact early adoption, how do you find your income and outcome for the rest of the year? I'm not going to really talk about my personal income prospects, but I'm generally optimistic about the future of my career. Um, what are your thoughts? Where do you think the clean energy sector is headed after the gutting of the Inflation Reduction Act? I think you'll still have clean energy, um, but I think you're not going to see as much subsidized alternative energy products until oil prices either get high enough to that those things are competitive on their own, or that um, the prices of those things drop. I think solar has a role, but I don't really think countries like Germany, where it's cloudy most of the year, should be predominantly powered by solar. I think those clean energy will go to the places where it actually economically makes sense, and that's probably the best really outcome for everybody. Because if you have energy artificially expensive, it really hurts the long-term competitiveness of your economy and your society. Uh, let's see. Thoughts on Bitcoin Act? I'm not really sure what's in the Bitcoin Act, so I don't really have enough thoughts. I don't follow it that closely. Next one is what are your thoughts on the big beautiful bill? Um, my view on the big beautiful bill is I don't think it's going to be as big and beautiful as people hope it to be, because there are real risks um, about this in terms of the deficit spending getting out of control to the point that there is a run on the U.S. bond market. Like interest rates are high, are relatively high. Even though the stock market has recovered a lot of the Liberation Day losses, the bond market hasn't, and that's kind of a sign saying, "Hey, look, there might be a limitation to um, fiscal profligacy." Like when Liz Truss tried to do a giant tax cut when she took power in the UK, the gilt market rebelled against her, and she was thrown out shortly, along with her tax cut and stimulus proposal. So, yeah, that is kind of my take on it. Um, I generally am in favor of tax cuts over other means of government stimulus. However, I did a video which I literally went and broke down how I would balance the budget. And even if you believe that there's at least $500 billion in efficiencies from Doge, and we're about maybe, I think the more realistic number is about half that. If you really want to balance the budget, you're going to have to raise revenue for at least $1 of tax increases for every $9 in government spending cuts. And I don't really think anybody is willing to do that combination. Like there's a lot of people who want to cut taxes without cutting spending, and that was why Reaganomics didn't work perfectly. And I think that's the risk here either. But yeah, I think there's going to be some fiscal wall. Like this happened in the 90s with Clinton, and he tried to do Hillary care and similar things, and the bond market kind of revolted. Um, I think you could see the same thing with Trump. But yeah, in general, I think tax cuts, particularly for small businesses and upper middle class people, will probably be good for the economy. Uh, and the reason people say, oh, tax cuts go disproportionately to the rich, well, that's because they pay the disproportionate amount of taxes. Like the US may not have the highest marginal tax rates in the world, but it has the steepest brackets in terms of how progressive is in terms of the steepness from the low end to the high end. Like Europe has higher tax rates, but it's flatter curve. And people don't really realize that. Um, oh, thank you for the super chat. Oh, Usama. I would like to see a couple collabs with uneducated economist. He's working class guy with some brilliant pragmatic takes on economics. Thanks. I'll check it. I'll check in with that. I have briefly watched some of his videos, but not enough to really have a good idea of his entire thought process. Would you do a finance conspiracy theory iceberg type video? Maybe you already have. Well, I kind of have. It's called the Iceberg of Finance series. It's one of the first series on this channel. And last Thanksgiving, I made a compilation of all of them because I did it like over a multi-month period a few years ago. You'll notice I had a beard in those videos because this was back when I grew one in 2021 when I made these. And I go into it, and if you want to see the weirder conspiracy stuff, it's in the deeper layers closer to the end of the iceberg. And like, if you're doing the individual videos, it's like parts 7, 8, 9. And I talk about, that's what iceberg are. You start with the basic stuff and just move your way down. And I didn't rip the iceberg finance one off of Reddit. I actually built the iceberg myself. So I picked on topics that I'm knowledgeable enough about that I would share publicly, but still interesting. So yeah, Zach, if you want to check out that's what it would be. Nick, you should go on Fresh and Fit. I mean, I don't really think I would have any role. I'm not a Manosphere YouTuber. That'd be like going on whatever, which I think actually they filmed that where I went to college. But I don't know. If they invited me, I'd maybe consider it, but I don't think I would add much to their conversation. Thoughts on the gig economy? Will we work salary jobs or do work on a job by job basis? Yeah, I mean, I think the gig economy is just kind of just a more freedom version of what's of like previous low wage work. I mean, would you rather do deliveries for DoorDash or drive Ubers or work at a fast food restaurant all day? So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I mean, I think the gig economy is just a replacement and a different type of work more than merging a new class. Next one is thoughts on let's see, there's a question I wanted to answer that I missed. What do you think of Abigail Johnson from Fidelity? I don't know enough about her. I probably read some of her work without knowing it, to be quite honest. Do you know Aaron Clary? I mean, back when I did a podcast before this channel, I did have him as a guest. I think that I made a comment on the iceberg of economics that I think that he is unintentionally the most famous feminist economist in the world. Not in the sense that he is a feminist, but in the sense that he is more vocal about how feminism affects and the social issues that arise from that actually affect economic decision making. So he technically is a feminist economist, even though he probably wouldn't consider himself one. I think he's a little. I've read some of his books. I think he's a little bit. He's a little more cynical of a worldview than I do. So I probably don't agree with him on a lot of things eye to eye. Um, but I nevertheless, he is an interesting heterodox thinker. Um, and generally with red pill people, I think they tend to be overly cynical on a lot of things. And so, but I could kind of see their perspective, but I don't entirely agree with it. Next thing, thoughts on Japanese companies long term. Um, Japanese companies had a really good bull run from like the Abenomics era, and even more recently, the Nikkei has finally broken its highs that were previously like around the year I was born. So it's been kind of a long time for Japan being the doldrums, but I'm actually pretty bullish long term if they don't have a fiscal crisis. The main problem with Japan is they just have so much government debt, and if inflation ever really kicks off in a meaningful way, they won't be able to raise rates enough that will prevent them from ultimately defaulting, because that's kind of like it doesn't take that high of an interest rate for Japan to face a crisis. And if any people worry about the US defaulting, I think Japan is way more likely to default than the US, and other countries like the UK and France also are shoes to drop likely before the US. But assuming that doesn't happen, um, I think Japan has more favorable valuations than the US. I think Japan um, has figured out has a lot less social tensions than the US. They figured out how to like adapt to a declining population. They have become a leader in robotics technology, and I think that's going to be one of the major important global export industries. Um, so yeah, I I mean I think I'm positive on Japan, but I probably uh, but I think you have to look at it on a company by company basis, because and yen flows really determine whether the importers or the exporters are going to be the relative winners. Um, let's see. Does multiculturalism work? Um, it depends on what you mean by work. I, that's all I'm going to say on that. Can you speak about Moody's downgrade if you haven't already? Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'm not concerned at all about Moody's downgrade. There's been three downgrades in the history of the U.S. government bonds. There was S&P downgrading the U.S. government in 2011, which was near a major bottom. Actually, like the first, like it was right near the peak of the European debt crisis, and there was a lot of other variables going on. So I don't think the market really cared um, about the I don't think the market really cared that much about it because there was too many other things going on with the European debt crisis at the time. Um, I think that the other thing too is you had the second one, which is Fitch downgrade in 2023, and the market was going through its convulsions from interest rates going up from 0 to 5% and the result of the inflation under the Biden years. And so I don't think the market really reacted to Fitch at all either in a meaningful way. And I think this time I don't think it matters that much either, because the area that the level of credit rating that the US government bonds would have to go down to in order to like trigger like banks and insurance companies to sell their treasury holdings because they're no longer considered safe collateral is like two or three notches lower from here. So moving it from AAA to AA plus is not really enough to it's not going to trigger any like Basel warnings or anything like that. So I I think it's kind of a non-event, to be quite frank. So that's my take on it. Thoughts on concentration industries and the so-called passive investment bubble. I talked about this earlier, and I also talked about it in a video that I did in the wealth management um, iceberg series, where I clearly went into Michael Green. He'd be a guy who I'd really like to come on to the channel. I think he's really interesting. His thesis on indexing and all of the risks involved with that. I think we'd have a good conversation. So if any of you guys have any contacts with Michael Green and would see if you'd like to come on Analyzing Finance with Nick. That's something I definitely think would be a great guest for the channel. And I'm just looking through my archive to find the video where I talk specifically about this issue. I think it's in the Iceberg of Wealth Management. Or if it's not, it's one of those other videos I did around that. How tall I am. I'm 6 feet tall. That's my height. That's the question I got here. Next one. Let's see. Do you know of Academic Agent? I think it would be a great collaboration on class structures. I think somebody sent me one of his videos a while ago, but I don't really remember much about it to say anything strong one way or the other. Isn't solar the cheapest form of green energy already? No, it's not the cheapest form. Natural gas is far cheaper than solar in most use cases. And you also have nuclear, which has higher fixed costs, but way lower variable costs. Brett Johnson would be an interesting speaker too. I've met him at conferences before. His dollar milkshake is an interesting thesis, and I've talked about it on several live streams in the past. But DC, I was originally supposed to be doing a DC meetup earlier this spring, but I was supposed to be speaking at another event that got postponed. So whenever I go to that, do my speaking engagement that I'm supposed to be doing there in the future, I will have the fan meetup within a few days of that, so I can do it in one trip. So that's the answer to the DC. I haven't had a set date on it, but it will happen. I do plan on coming to DC. Am I married? Not yet. Next question. Are you planning on making a video on Germany? I did make a video on Germany several years ago about the economic future of Germany and why their energy policy was making them uncompetitive, and their self voluntary deindustrialization has not really worked out. I just posted a link in the chat about that. Yeah, take on old money, leaving white collar work to work in the trades to start service businesses. I don't really know how many old money are working into the trades. Like, that doesn't seem like a very old money thing to do, unless if they lost all their money for some reason or another. Thoughts on looks maxing. Again, I try to save all the dating related stuff for the February live stream and the Valentine's Day special video, because this is a finance and economics channel. I make one or two videos as fan service kind of per year. I did that with class and dating this time around. But yeah, I mean, I think there are much better things you can invest in other than looks maxing. That's the only little hint I'm going to give on that. Are you going to create a video on what it takes to become the new aristocracy? I kind of made a video about this called How to Move Up a Social Class back in December. So if that doesn't have enough, you can feel to ask me more later after you watch those. And while I'm chatting, I'm going to post the links to the Europe meetups. There's Amsterdam. Here's Zurich. And what's it called? And then Geneva and Rome, I'm going to be posting to pretty soon. Let's see. Other question I have is another series I'm exploring doing is economic futures. I'm going to bring back that. I don't know how many people. Here's the one for Geneva, and here's the one for Rome. But the question I had really for you guys is, how many of you guys watched my economic futures videos? Those are the ones that I talk about, like a various country. I made these before the old money series took off, where I talked about like a country's economic future history, what its main strengths and weaknesses are, and based on that, like what can you expect for the future of that country. And I've done it for about 20 countries so far, all over the world. And do you think what's it called? Um, do you think I should do more of those? And if you want me to bring back the Economic Futures series, what countries should I do? I'm going to do one for Switzerland, and I'm going to do one for the Netherlands, and I'm going to do one for Italy. Like those are going to be for sure added to the Economic Futures series. I'm going to probably, the other thing I'm also exploring doing is on the state level. Should I do Economic Futures of US states or cities? What's it called? Should I, like, for example, like the state of Hawaii or Los Angeles or Chicago? Like, I'm also considering bringing back the economic, because that's one of my favorite. That was one of my favorite series to make on this channel, is because I like learning about geography and countries and what causes people to move to certain cities and why economic activity takes place in certain places. Okay, why are people keep asking me about looks maxing? Like, it's kind of a weird question, to be quite honest. Really wanted a Vancouver meetup. I'm doing one in Seattle, so that's my Pacific Northwest stop. I don't have enough of an audience in Vancouver. I'm going to Calgary this weekend, so I guess that's, I know they're not close, but those are your two closest ones. Yeah. Let's see. What are you actively trying to learn more about? There's a lot of things I'm trying to learn more about. I am trying to learn more about increasing my EQ. That's something I probably need to work on quite a bit, like, and just emotional intelligence generally. I'm trying to work on marketing. That's and sales and business development are stuff I'm trying to learn about. I'm learning about YouTube and like the creator economy and how to like have success. How, like, now the channel's gaining some traction, I'm getting really competitive about it, and I'd like to make this as good as possible. So learning how to improve YouTube. AI. I want to learn more about AI because there's a lot of applications that can really scale my efforts. So yeah, that's another thing that I want to learn more about, because I think there's just such a lot of potential there to just improve the quality of life and to improve my business and make it more efficient. And then Catholic theology is the other one. I've gotten a lot more serious about my Catholic faith over the last several years. And as I eventually have a family of my own, I want to learn more about that. And I've been getting a lot more involved with things on that front. So yeah, those are kind of the things I'm learning a lot about lately. So business and marketing stuff, EQ and sales, AI technology, and Catholic theology. And then, of course, finance and economics, because that's what I do for a living. So I'm always trying to learn more about what's going on in the markets and the economy and all that. But that's kind of a given. Let's see. Other questions. Any other non-dating questions? Okay. By the way, Nick News Star, so he's talking about how the changing orders also change the elite path since the college degree was the old path. Well, I am going to be having a discussion with another YouTuber about how the old counter elite has become the new establishment elite. So maybe that might answer your question. How Brian asks, why does global fertility follow tech and indoor lighting? I don't really think you've had societies with tech and indoor lighting that have high fertility rates. I think the bigger problem is housing affordability is the main thing that is driving down fertility rates. At least, and I'm talking about developed economies like East Asia, Europe, North America, Australia, etc. Like once you get to a certain GDP per capita level, the main determinant for fertility, in my opinion, is housing affordability. And this also, the other bigger concern on a class basis is that people are afraid of class by having kids, and a lot of people just afraid off to be unacceptable. anything, if you want to really fix, if housing policy is something that's too big and too hard to fix, if you want to, on a cultural basis, fix the birth rate problem, make it high status to have large families. Like make it like the new money status symbol instead of a Ferrari is having 5 children. If that becomes, that is some cases, some niches of like the Catholic community still kind of is that way. But for the general population, having a big family is not really the status symbol. But I'm starting to see that change in affluent areas. Like when you see somebody like a family of 4, like, or 5 children, and people are impressed, like, because they realize how expensive that is. And so if you can afford to do that and live in still an affluent community, it's a major status symbol, at least in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of other people who feel that way too. Um, why do the number of hours worked per capita increase with productivity and technology? Wouldn't that increase capacity for leisure? It depends on what you consider work. Like, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Cal Newport, but he's this guy. He's all about productivity, and Cal Newport basically has this theory that people have a maximum of 4 hours of deep work capacity per day. It's just because of the way our brains are constructed. And so that might, I don't know how many of those working hours are actually working hours, if you know what I mean. A lot of that is just like mindless emails or maybe scrolling through some reading that required for your work while listening to my YouTube channel in the background, or taking a call while you're at the gym, like lunch breaks, etc. So like I think that a lot of it is just increased inefficiency of work, maybe more than actual work hours going up. And a lot of industries that have super tight deadlines, which like investment banking, consulting, which trigger very long hours, is an efficiency problem. They could reduce their hours if they were willing to hire twice the amount of juniors on the team, but they don't do that because they want the higher salary to attract the Ivy Leaguers to work at those firms. They'll like, and the prestige associated with those firms is because of the high salaries right after college. So a lot of it is a product of inefficiency. Like Germans work the least amount of hours, I think, of the major EU countries, yet they have the most productive economy. Or at least they did prior to them, like destroying their manufacturing capacity through bad energy policy. But even a lot of the other productive economies, like the Netherlands and Switzerland and like Finland and some of these in Europe, they have high GDP per capita, high productivity. Norway, high productivity levels, but they don't actually work as much hours like when you see as like the Greeks or the Italians or the Spanish. So it's quality over quantity, I think, is really what people need to think about when it comes to labor. What are your thoughts on investment banking as a career? I'm sorry if I'm posting a lot of old videos, guys, but I've answered these questions and I have much longer, more detailed answers about a lot of them. So that's why I'm sending a lot of links today, because I did do a video about investment banking, and should you pursue a career in investment banking. I'm just trying to find it right now. It's called Is Investment Banking Worth It? And if you want my answer on that, here you go. There's my answer on investment banking. Let's see. What got you into finance? Well, when I was a kid, my grandparents gave me shares of stock instead of cash for a birthday present. And I was curious about what it was. And it wasn't even that much money, but so it was like the same as if they would bought me like a few video games or something, but it was enough to get me curious. And so I dived into it, and I learned about markets. I did like paper trading type strategies online and did competitions with my friends in high school. And I thought, oh, this is cool, but I'm going to have to do it when I retire because I'm never going to have enough money to really meaningfully live off my trading profits until then. So then, but then I worked under a hedge fund manager who happened to meet through my school's economics department, and he taught me a lot of the more advanced things like global macro, short selling, currencies, commodities, emerging markets, options, etc. And that's what got me really interested. And I learned that there's a whole industry like the hedge fund and money management industry that people will pay you fees to manage other people's money. So yeah, that's kind of how I figured it out. Um, let's see. Do you have a reading list? Yes, I do have a reading list, and you get the reading list for free if you join my Substack, my free Substack. So yeah, I people ask me a lot about the about reading lists. So I will attach a link to how to sign up for my Substack, and that's where you will get it. I think it's already in the description, if not. So yeah, I do have a reading list. I just have to figure out how to get it without making noise from a YouTube link in the background. But um, let's see. Next question. All right. Yeah, they gave me shares of a small amount of shares in a company, a U.S. stock, but I don't even really get into detail about it. I don't really hold them since I sold them years ago, but um, let's see. Let's see if I have any questions. How does one increase their EQ? Um, Good question. I mean, I think it's just kind of like trial and error has been how I've increased my EQ over the years. And I read a few books about it, but there's a difference between reading books about it and lived experience. And that's what I'm going to actually do a quick sidetrack. I'm going to tell my thoughts about reading because a lot of people have asked me about reading, and I thought I'd make a whole video about this, but it's too short to make a video about it. So I'm just going to talk about it right now. Um, I think reading is the most valuable between the ages of 6 to 21 years old. Um, I think I think you should read as much as you possibly can in those ages. Um, I think fiction is good for kids and teenagers because it gives you an understanding of the cultural canon, particularly the classics, but also greatly expands your vocabulary and gets you into the habit of reading. But then once you're past a certain age, I don't really see the point in reading fiction. It's kind of like a slower version of watching a movie, essentially. Um, and you then time to switch to nonfiction of things you want to learn about to improve your knowledge of the world and make yourself a more interesting and productive person and can apply things. And I would recommend saying reading half of stuff like in your niche and half of your stuff, nonfiction content out of your niche. And when I was in my 20s, I would read at least 50 books a year. But then you get to a certain point where your brain kind of gets full and you move up enough in your career or have enough working knowledge that you can actually apply some of the lessons you learned. And that's the point where you need to pull back from reading and switch to learning through action and learning through applying the lessons you've learned through books. Because there's the analysis paralysis idea where you can just read and educate yourself and just keep reading on message boards and blogs and books and listen to podcasts and watch YouTube channels. And it's really just procrastination at a certain point. Once you get a certain fundamental knowledge of things, you got to actually, the only way you're going to learn is trial by fire. It's like the difference between paper trading and putting real money on the line. In theory, it's the same type of clicks, but the psychological component with real money being involved just completely changes the stakes. And it's the same like reading about business versus doing business or reading about, I don't know, learning a new like craft versus actually doing the craft or reading about improving your social skills versus actually talking to new strangers. Like there's a certain point in the age of 25 and 30 where you need to have your primarily knowledge base go through action versus theoretical. And yeah, top finance books for a newbie. Well, again, they have them all in the reading list, which I am about to send you guys. Just let me load it up for a second. So yeah, so I just have to find the link here. But then, are you well versed in Marxist materialism? Yeah, and I generally disagree with it. Like, I think that you should create a channel called Looks Maxing with Nick. That's actually a pretty funny comment. Let's see. Can you become a professional level trader by doing it on the side for fun in a trading account? I mean, there are some people who have, like, read the latest Market Wizards book. Like Chris Camillo, I think, is a good example of somebody like that. He has a really good finance channel, Dumb Money Live, if you like that kind of thing. It's probably better, though, if you're professionally trained. But you can learn this stuff. You can read the CFAs and pass all the exams. You can learn through trading. Like, losing money in trading, like the slang for that is paying tuition, because that's essentially what it is. Every time you lose money, you learn something about yourself as a trader. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. Next question that I have here is what's it called? What are your thoughts on antitrust enforcement? I am generally pro antitrust enforcement. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm all the way a complete distributionist, but I think there is a danger to having concentration in market share for single companies and having big corporations be a certain size of the economy and society that is just as dangerous as having a big of a government. Like that. So yeah, I mean, you have to prove. I think our current process works well. They have to prove some sort of harm, but yeah, I think there might be a little bit too much concentration. David Tepper wrote a really good book about this. I forgot the title off the top of my head, but it's the idea that, like, a lot of the social problems and economic problems for society is just simply due to too weak of an antitrust enforcement. And yeah, so in general, I'm probably more. What are your thoughts on the BIS? Well, I did a video about the BIS, and it's called, like, the true thoughts of the World Bank, the IMF, and the BIS. And so I recommend watching that if you want that. So yeah, here is the link to the reading list. I finally found it, you guys. So if you subscribe to my Substack, you'll get an email as a free member that will have all the books. That includes finance books. That includes everything. Yeah. So let's see. So there's the answer to that. And then I will also put a link to the BIS video, because I know it's become actually surprisingly a very popular video of mine, even though I released it several months ago. So yeah, let's see. Now I'm going to scroll through some of these other questions. Is the reading list in a sequential order, like from beginner to more advanced? No, it's in an order of, like, topics. Like, I'll have one section is finance books, business and entrepreneurship books, old money social class books, general history books, and geography. And that's how I sort it. I sort it more by category. And if you guys like this channel, you'll probably like the Substack, because it's an email that you'll get links to a few of my recently released videos, plus some of my general commentary, and also updates for all the fan tour meetups or anything else I'm doing really with the channel, or other projects that I'm involved with. So I highly recommend joining the Substack for those reasons. Um, just a good way to stay in touch. Thoughts on the market? That's very vague. Um, and I'm not going to go into specific investment outlooks because that's one of my rules on this channel. How edgy are the member videos? Well, you got to become a member to find out. I did do a debunking the doomer on Passport Bros, so that might be a hint. Do you think it is more competitive to ascend the establishment pyramid or the counter elite pyramid? It depends on your personality type. Like, are you good at the game of politics and office politics, or are you somebody who is more willing to hustle and like be willing to like be a self-starter and willing to face a lot of rejection? Like, so I did a video about this, how to move up the social class. What streams or podcasts do I follow? I don't follow many streams, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's probably too long to do that in this live stream. I might make a separate video or maybe a separate live stream. It actually gave me an idea for a seasonal live stream. It's just, what other content do I follow? So I'm just writing that down right now. Yeah, that's a good. Are famous investors who you think are overrated? Yeah, there are. I'd have to go through all of the list of them because I can't think of one who's obviously on the top of my head, but I know they exist. Let's see. Make a Substack of your podcast list. No, that's not a bad idea either, actually. So, yeah, I do B2C sales or high ticket day trading mentorships. Thoughts on the viability of people? Well, 99% of people don't make it day trading. Yeah, it's really simple as that. Like, the shorter the time frame, the harder to accurately invest. The longer the time frame is an asset. What do you think about RAs being one of the fastest growing businesses right now? I didn't realize RAs were one of the fastest growing businesses. I know they have that increase in M&A activity because there's a lot of older RAs who are looking to retire, and the economies of scale work well. So a lot of aggregators are buying up other RAs. But I didn't realize RAs in general organically. Like, that's the question. Are they growing organically, or are they the fastest growing business due to M&A? I would believe the latter, but not necessarily the former. Yeah. I'm not going to answer. Let's see. I do not have any kids. Let's see. I'm not divorced, so that's not one either. Let's see. An interesting video is people that were not really accepted into the upper class, no matter how rich they got. For example, Al Fayed and Pablo Escobar. Remember him being disrespected from the parliament. That's the counter elite. The counter elite are people who advance through non-conventional ways or who are kicked out of the establishment elite. Like, if I did that video, it'd basically be a video explaining the counter elite. Do you think Gen Z is lazy? No, I do not think Gen Z is lazy at all. I think they might be a little bit spiritually weak in certain ways, and they are a more materialist worldview, and they are hyper rational, but they are very good at saving money. They are very pragmatic with how they manage their careers. They are a lot just more practical, and I think they also, I think that they just are just logical in a lot of ways. But I think that though, there's always a bottom half of every generation. Just the bottom half shows up in different ways. And I'm not going to go into how those bottom half shows up in different ways, but there's a bottom 50% of every generation that kind of underperforms. And they just assume is every person like that. And the people who outperform have very different personalities, like the top half. And that's kind of where you assert the value of what's it called? Yeah, is on that. Um, let's see. Do you? Let's see. That's kind of my take on that. I think Gen Zs, I think, are going to be more successful than the ones who actually apply themselves. Are going to do probably better than any generation until the one after them, who's going to benefit a lot from just simply the low birth rates, not having many people there. Um, why? What do you think about millennials? I think millennials are kind of quixotic, for lack of a better word. They're idealists, but they're not practical. Um, I got a super chat. Are you available? No, I am in a relationship right now, so I'm not on the market. Sorry, but like out of privacy, I'm not going to comment more than that. Let's see. Um, when it comes to millennials, I think that they're more quixotic. They're idealistic, but not practical. Um, that's kind of the unicorn meme. Kind of comes from that. Um, and the idea that they all kind of went to college thinking that they're just like this special great person, and then when they get in the real world they got hit hard, and they also are unfortunate for graduating during the great financial crisis, which limited a lot of job opportunities that other college students in previous generations would have had. I know because I am a millennial. Also, millennials are by far the most left-wing generation in like of any living generation in America. Um, and like that their idealism in a lot of ways translated, they cared more about certain causes and experiences over like their actual practical quality of life things. And I think that's kind of one of the weaknesses of millennials. But on the bright side, millennials want to actually create new institutions. They want to actually make things and build a new system. So like the idealism is sometimes needed for these transition periods. Like if everything's just too cynical and cold and practical, you get a lot of the critiques of Gen Z being overly materialistic and quiet quitting and not striving to do anything. So I think there's room for it. I think the millennials are more to the extreme on one end on the idealist side, and the Gen Z are more to the extreme on the other side. Um, but yeah, that's my take on that. Pacers or Knicks? Well, I mean, the Pacers, I think, are won the first two games in New York, are up 2-1. So I think the Pacers are going to win. What was the best year to be born? Depends on what you want to do. And I'm actually going to be doing a series about that. I'm starting with the video that's coming out this weekend. Um, I would say if you were trying to like have a traditional like middle class, upper middle class life, probably somewhere between 1969 to 1975 would probably be it. Like your career started right at the beginning of the 90s boom, and you had 10 years to really kind of grow or build a business and make things happen. Um, so yeah, I would say anywhere from 1967 to 1975 would probably be like from like a pure career basis. But in terms of like technology and potential and a lot of other things, it's probably the best year to be alive is probably in the future. Like, but like within living memory is probably that era. Opinions in Gen Alpha. I mean, what is Gen Alpha? People born between 2012 and 2025. I mean, I don't really know that many Gen Alpha people. Like, I have, I have a few nephews and like cousins, kids of my cousins in that category, but I think it's too young to say, honestly. Should we phase out and abolish Social Security eventually? It needs to be reformed so it's more like a 401k. It's just not sustainable, the current model for it. Um, that's my take on it. Uh, what are funds you are a fan of? I'm not going to get into that because that's kind of more investing advice. If you want to know more about that, contact me directly. Um, let's see. Thoughts on hyperinflation actually happening in the next few years? I think it's very low. Um, do you the middle class die after we went off the gold standard in 1971? No, it didn't die, but it mean reverted. I talked about that earlier on the live stream. Is owning a home better than renting? It depends where you live. Which college major has the highest ROI? Um, I'm not really sure because of AI disrupting everything. But I think that in terms of choosing a major, you got to choose something that you actually find interesting, that there is a job that exists. Like, and like if you look at the studies that show like the highest salary majors, like petroleum engineering, computer science, and accounting. But if you think those things are mind-numbingly boring, you're just gonna flame out anyway. Um, so yeah, why not single payer? Because there's unlimited wants and limited resources. You're going to have to ration healthcare somehow, whether you ration it through price, whether you ration it through wait times, or you ration it through withholding, or you ration it through changing the culture to encourage people to die younger. Either way, if there's that's the problem with healthcare. Do you really think there's gold in Fort Knox? I think there actually is gold in Fort Knox. The question is how much. Um, what caused the requirement of dual income versus Homer Simpson with only one job? Well, if you look at Springfield, Illinois today, where I think the show is based off, it's still very cheap. That, but I think a lot of that also has to do with just higher expectations of living standards, years of inflation, and immigration increasing the labor supply beyond, and so beyond like what the equilibrium would be. So real wages didn't really go up for a long time. Um, Easiest, most realistic way to jump classes. There's really no, I guess, other than marriage, it'd be like starting a business and selling it, uh, or just being really good at office politics and moving up the corporate ladder. Is there a risk that S&P crashing and not returning to the peak for decades? Yeah, there's always that risk. That's if there wasn't, there wouldn't be, or no risk, no reward. Um, do I think that's the most likely scenario? No, but there's a real risk of it. Are you a Bernie supporter? No. Um, let's see. How would you restructure healthcare? I mean, I'm not really a healthcare professional, so I don't really know enough about it to really have a good idea. But I think I would skew more towards health insurance being more for catastrophic things and making more routine healthcare like out of pocket payments if I had to do some changes on the edges. Um, Family implications of a wife out earning a husband. I think that's a dating question. I'm not going to deal with that one. Um, are you worried about climate change? How can we keep capitalism and climate change? I'm not worried about climate change. I did a debunking the doomer video about climate change a few years ago. If you want to watch it for my full thesis, but in general, I think that it's kind of like the birth rate issue. These are problems that self-correct because they're very far out in the future and people are adjusting to prepare for them. So I think that the birth rate problem will self-correct. And I think it's the climate change with the right. And I think climate change will um, resolve itself too. And I don't think the other question that people really don't answer about climate change is why is the climate warming? Let's just give them that. Let's just say like, it's true. Climate is changing. There's a lot of warming of the environment and all that. Why is it automatically a bad thing? That's really the question. Like for every place that becomes too hot to live, there's plenty of places like Canada and Siberia and Scandinavia that become more inhabitable. Like for every place where there's less rain, there's another place that gets more rain. So how do we know that the jigsaw puzzle combination is automatically going to be the worst left tail version? And I have not really seen a good rebuttal to that. So thoughts on white collar jobs being offshore to Canada, India? Well, I mean, it makes sense to offshore to Canada. Their wages are a fraction of that of the US, but they have similar quality of education and language and cultural affinities and time zone. So yeah. Is 401k a Ponzi scheme? No, it's not a Ponzi scheme unless you think the entire capital market is a Ponzi scheme. Um, is Miami the future of tech, or have they peaked? I think Miami is going to increasingly become a bigger and bigger financial hub. If any city has the chance of replacing New York for that role, I think it would be Miami. It's going to happen. I think Dallas is a city that also I think could replace Los Angeles, the second most important city. Um, I think more likely than Austin. I think Austin. The problem is that they don't have the high end like jobs and talent like they do in the gateway cities. But I think it's gonna be it's still gonna be a rising city. It's gonna be a very good city for middle class professionals, upper middle class to move who want a more comfortable life, and center of like counter right wing counterculture intellectual thought. Um, but yeah, um, who are those people in the pictures behind you? That's a book called Orange County Inc. Where they're entrepreneurs who are from where I am from in Orange County, California, who have shaped our community, but also made like nationally recognizable and or publicly traded companies that you all know today. Um, how would you fix the housing market to make it more affordable for young people without crashing the home values? I mean, that's kind of a contradictory. You have to have the housing values go down, unless if you're willing to stomach a large amount of inflation, where you have wages go up because of general consumer price index going higher, but housing staying flat. That's like you're going to have the real price of housing has to come down. Will we ever have a free market in the U.S.? There's been several times in history we've had a free market in the U.S., and I think we have still a mostly free market. It's not perfect, but yeah. Thoughts on Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell? I like Thomas Sowell. I think he's one of the better economists out there. I've read a lot of his books. I like his second approach to second order thinking. Milton Friedman also, I think, is one of the more important economists of the 20th century. I don't really agree with his idea on negative income tax, but I generally think he's a good economic thinker. What is the meaning of life? That's a deep question. I may have to say that for analyzing philosophy with Nick when I start that, or analyzing theology with Nick if I ever start that. Um, let's see. Thoughts on intergenerational mortgages? Not a good idea. I don't think debt should be passed down. That would set the precedent of like debt peonage coming back and other things like that. So I don't really like the idea. How do you crash the value of housing? Well, you just have supply go up faster than demand. It might just happen due to demographic turnover. You just increase a lot of construction. That's why Austin rents have crashed recently. In Florida, rents have crashed because of just building a lot more than people coming, and deregulation. You like you'll just get rid of a lot of the restrictions that are preventing development right now. That's how you do it. Um, let's see. What is the pros and cons of reverse mortgages? Again, that's like a financial advice question. So if you want to know more about that, contact me directly. What city will replace Silicon Valley? I think it'll just be more widely distributed everywhere. Like every metro area will have a Silicon Valley and a tech hub. Like there's no reason, especially in the age of remote work and AI, why should all the tech people all live in the same place? There's no real rational reason. It's just inertia at this point. Um, yeah, that's kind of my take on that. Uh, I think I am going to do about 15 more minutes of this live stream because I'm starting to lose my voice. If you have any more questions, feel free to slide them in. And if you want to make sure you get answered, have a super chat. And if you want, also just remember if you want to reach out to me for something more personalized or more direct, whether in terms of investments or anything else, please contact me either through the contact consultation form or through my website. And get started. I got a super chat here. I'm a major skeptic of the global demographic data. Russia land seems like a deal to me. How risky is cross-border investment? It depends on the country, to be quite honest. It's like if you have a country with poor rule of law, you should expect to lose your money within a certain period of time. It's a game of hot potato. If you have a country with good rule of law, strong property rights, it's not any riskier than investing in domestically. So it depends really on the country. And I think as an American, it's probably not safe to invest in a place like Russia because they do not treat capital well there. That's why their valuations are always really cheap, is because they don't your money your assets could be taken at any moment on a political whim. Um, yeah, I said for the 4 hour questions, 4 hours of like deep, intense mental work. Do you have any interesting stories about career mistakes I've made? I have a lot of them. I don't know if I want to share them on YouTube. You could come to one of my meetups and ask me that. I'll have you talk about those stories in person. As I've mentioned earlier in this live, I'm doing meetups across the country, starting with and in Canada with Calgary this weekend. Then I'm going to Chicago, Cincinnati, Nashville, LA, Orange County, Santa Cruz, Fresno, Seattle, and then 4 stops in Rome. And in Europe, Rome, Geneva, Zurich, and Amsterdam. So yeah, thoughts on the affluent society. What do you mean by the affluent society? Is that a title of a book? Um, Nick, you know exactly what country you have a heritage from, and would you take up citizenship? I have it already. Okay, like my mother's side is Swiss, and I have a Swiss citizenship, so I beat you to the punch there. Let's see. How do you see income inequality evolving in the age of AI and constant layoffs? Well, again, I talked about this earlier. I think AI could actually be a what's it called? Um, a I think AI could create the new yeoman class with people being able to scale large scale businesses, less people, or it could create a lot of inequality. It's a debate. What are your thoughts on having multiple citizenships? I'm eligible for passports by ancestry in Europe. I think it's a good insurance policy. If you want to have a career in like high level federal politics, you might have to get rid of it. But yeah, especially if it's a country whose like geopolitics are a little bit non-correlated to your home country. But yeah, I just think of it as kind of like an insurance policy. But yeah, I don't think you need 4 of them. You probably a second one is enough. Let's see. What kind of car do you drive? I'm not going to really say that out of privacy because I don't want people to track me personally, because I've already kind of revealed where I live in terms of city and other things about me. So I'm just going to not say that. Are you part Persian? Um, no, I am not Persian at all. All my heritage is like Southwestern European to a certain degree. Um, if life insurance wastes of money, it depends on your case by case basis. Um, yeah. What are the social implications of whites out earning husbands? Um, yeah, there's a lot of data that says that it's really about how each person feels about that. I don't think there's really an economic problem, but it's does each romantic partner feel secure, more or less secure with the relationship because of that dynamic? Um, let's see. Um, why? All right. How far are you from 20 million? Um, Far enough that I'm not retiring next year, but I'm not going to go into more than that. Um, yeah, I think that might be a good idea. Is like I'll answer personal questions if I feel like they don't risk my safety um, or just things I don't want to disclose. But certain things I don't mind sharing. But and I know how to be selective. I want citizenship in Switzerland. The U.S. has a serious privacy problem due to data breaches. Social Security is the worst. I mean, the one advantage of Europe is they do have the right to be forgotten, which is nice. Given the option of which citizenship will you want, I already have all the citizenships I want, so I don't really want any more. Like so, yeah. I mean, let's see. What is will the birth rate in America ever hit 2.1? Yeah, when housing prices get affordable enough where it makes sense to have kids and buy a 3 bedroom house near a job center. Um, yeah, then it makes sense. Um, let's see. Do you have thoughts on having more single room occupancy units constructed? Um, No, I generally don't like SROs because they tend to attract a certain crowd that makes a neighborhood less pleasant to be in for a variety of reasons. Mainly, there's like crime and security reasons. I think with the opposite, I think you need more larger apartments, like 3 bedroom plus apartments, so families could live in like urban cores. Like they have these in European and Asian cities where you have larger like apartments that instead of living in a single family home, you live like in a townhome or an apartment, but it's the same size as what a single family home would be. Did reading all these books really accumulate help wealth? It's kind of like marketing. You spend a lot of money in marketing, but only 20% of it is a result of 80% of the results. That's probably the same thing with this, to be quite honest with you. Like I've read a lot, maybe 20% of the books were useful and 80% were not, but you never know. How will you spend your time in retirement? Depends how young I am when I retire, but um, I assume I would have a family by then, so I'd spend time with them. I would probably do more public intellectual type stuff. That's something I would want to do more of. Maybe I would um, embrace some more hobbies. Um, yeah, like etc. Do you want 3 kids? Yeah, I'd want at least 3 kids, probably 3 to 4. At 5 plus, logistics become a problem. Um, but yeah, I talked about what I would do in retirement in a previous live stream. That's why I'm not going into it. Um, why don't we have high speed railway over spending on transport? Well, California tried to build one, and look what happened there. I just think America's airport infrastructure was built well before, and the distances are just too far. Like even with high speed rail, like it's not going to be practical to take a train from Chicago to Los Angeles. It's just not. Um, thoughts on Otani joining the Oakland A's? I don't think that's happened. I don't think he would ever join, and they're not even in Oakland anymore. But I think that's just a troll comment. Um, would you do well in a classic NYC IB office environment? Probably not. And no, golf is not a mindless activity. I'm not really that great at the office politics thing. I'm not really enthused on the idea of working long hours for without my own equity ownership in a company. So yeah, it wouldn't be mine. Worst US president, James Buchanan. Not even close. He let the Civil War happen and not do anything about it. So is it possible for the US citizen to either attain a new identity? I have no idea. Sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. Um, let's see. Do you think the USA will have a bloody revolution? Probably not. Um, I think it's less than a 5% chance within the next 50 years. What is your MBTI? INTJ is the answer to that. Um, let's see. Best statesman in modern history for the US or worldwide? Because that, that can that's the question really. Best US presidents. Okay. I like talking about history. It's one of my favorite non-finance topics. I think Lincoln was a great president because he kept the country together. I think George Washington, the first one, is still the best president, though, because he had the chance to be a king and turned it down and set the precedent for people leaving after 2 terms, which, as you've seen with other struggling democracies, that's not something we need to take for granted. Other good presidents, I think Grover Cleveland was a good president. I think outside of the Indian Removal Act, I think Andrew Jackson was a good president. Um, I think that what's it called? Reagan was a good president as well. Um, yeah, those are some examples of good presidents in American history. James Polk, too. He achieved manifest destiny. Thomas Jefferson was a pretty good president as well. So yeah, there's a lot of good presidents in the U.S. Yeah, I said Thomas Jefferson's probably a top 10 U.S. president. I don't really have a ranking really beyond like the top 3 or 4, but I'd have to think harder about that. Um, let's see. Which leader in history best suited to solving the cost of living crisis? Let's see how Javier Milei does in Argentina, but um, I know I think Reagan would be a good one actually for that. Um, but basically, you need to have somebody who can pitch austerity and have people not feel so bad about it, um, but also be willing to actually do austerity. Because the problem is, there's a lot of like more left leaning people who are good at the empathy side of things, like the FDRs of the world, but they wouldn't actually do the right policy to fix the cost of living crisis. So like you have FDR's demeanor, but with somebody with more of a pro austerity deregulatory agenda. Is Lincoln overrated? No, he's not. He kept the country together. Like that's, I mean, maybe you could say, oh, he was just the right place at the right time, but that's kind of a lot of with presidents. Like presidents who are presidents during crisis period have opportunities to prove themselves. Like Bill Clinton was a decent president, and part of that was just because he was in the right place at the right time. But as well, but the problem was is that he also didn't have a chance to prove himself in a crisis. But the fact that crisis didn't happen means that his reputation is not going to be that bad. I think history's going to look at Clinton a lot better in the future. Um, let's see. Do you think Lyndon Johnson and FDR were bad presidents? Yes, I do. They are in the bottom. I think them, Wilson, Buchanan are the bottom five. For the bottom five. Let's see. How does shareholder primacy affect GDP in a country without shareholder primacy? I think a country with shareholder primacy is going to have better economic growth because the incentives are more lined up. So that's the answer to your question. Um, so yeah, that's. Do you think that great leaders from centuries past would be great today? Bismarck, Metternich, Walpole, Churchill. Yeah, I think some of them would be better today, and some would be worse today. Um, like, but I would have to do a whole survey of history to really kind of determine that, and it would take me a while to think about this. And maybe I should do a video about presidents. Maybe next President's Day or like the next presidential election time, I should do a live stream about my opinions on presidents. Oh yeah, I forgot about on the bottom. There's a few other more contemporary presidents I would put there too, but I don't want to get too into that. Contemporary, I mean post 1975. Um, do you think the U.S. would become as cashless as contemporary Europe? No, I do not. Um, let's see. What is your take on government assets to be traded on the stock market? Well, I mean, you have government bonds traded um, in the market. Like, what do you mean, like government property? Like, there are state-owned enterprises in emerging market countries that are partially owned by the government that are traded on the stock market. I don't think that's really particularly unusual. Um, is the Singaporean model of public housing construction with creative financing a down payment a good one? Um, I mean, it depends on what the goal is. I mean, it does keep costs down, but it also at the same time, like you're limited in the type of quality of a place you can live in. I don't know if everyone wants to live in like government housing their entire life. But and they also are space constraints, so it's kind of a unique situation. Um, yeah, T bills are pretty liquid, um, but I'm not going to get into specific trading advice or anything like that here. Thoughts on trickle down economics? I mean, I think it could work if Reagan was willing to cut spending along with taxes. I think the bigger thing is trickle up wages. Like, is I think just as real of a phenomenon. Thoughts of gambling? I'm not a fan of gambling. Um, why is everybody asking about whether I'm autistic or not? I'll let you guys decide. I'm not going to answer that question. What are the tour meetups are about? It's a lecture or a meetup. It's both. And it depends on the size. Like the smaller meetups are like we meet out to eat at a restaurant and just chat and I answer questions. And I have a little bit of a prepared speech, but it's not as long. The bigger meetups, um, I have a formal speech. Sometimes I bring multiple speakers, and I mingling at the beginning and networking and chatting with everybody, and then I have my speech, and then I take Q&A, and then if people want to hang out after, we usually go get something to eat. So that's what they've all been very fun. So I really recommend coming to the meetups if you like the content on here. What is your heritage? People ask me, I'm Swiss, Portuguese, Italian, and particularly Tuscany specifically in northern Italy, and a little bit of English. So yeah, it's mostly Southwestern European. There's probably a high chance of people watching on the spectrum. That's why I'm asking you're autistic. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in earlier live streams. I had struggled with autistic related issues as a kid. And so, yeah, it's something that it's a cause probably in terms of charity. Like my favorite, the most important secular charity cause, like outside of Catholic related things I care about is autism. I think there's a lot of potential wasted in our society by not cultivating talent. And I think who are on the spectrum. And I think there is a lot we can do to help these people and help them get out of their funks. Like if it wasn't for a lot of people supporting me in my youth, I probably wouldn't be talking here right now. So yeah, I'm very passionate about the autism issue. Let's see. Dress code for the meetups. There really isn't a dress code for the meetup necessarily. I usually wear a sport coat and like some slacks, but I'm not expecting people to show up in a suit. But yeah, just dress presentable, dress nice. Let's see. If you were 18 years old today, would you go to college still? Yeah, I definitely would go to college still because at 18, you're not ready to be in the workforce. Most people are not. There are some exceptions, savants. It's like some people can make it straight from high school to the NBA. But I think most people need to go to college or do some sort of secondary, post-secondary education to kind of figure out what they want to do with their lives. And all the exposure to different things I experienced, whether social clubs, meeting people of different backgrounds, different academic classes I took, travel experiences, etc. It helped me figure out what I actually wanted out of life. And if I didn't do that, I would just be lost. So, yeah. Cristiano or Messi, I'm not a soccer fan. So, I have really no opinion. Apparently, Cristiano Ronaldo might be my fifth or sixth cousin, though. So, I guess I'll have to go with him based on genealogy research some of my family members have done. Will Trump run for a third term? Hopefully not. I don't think he will. His age, I think, is the main reason. And also, it's just constitutionally illegal. And if he tries, that would set a bad precedent for the country. And I wouldn't really support that at all. Thoughts on for-profit universities? I'm generally not a fan of for-profit universities, to be quite honest. Jordan or Jokic? If I'm gonna pick a tennis player, it's got to be Federer because he's Swiss. And basketball, I'm gonna pick Kobe because he's from my hometown, or at least that's where he lived most of his career and his life. What makes you laugh? Do you spend time mindlessly? I spend time mindlessly like anybody else. Laugh, it's kind of like my own sense of humor, I guess. List of your tour. Well, I have an Eventbrite that has all the full list of my tour. And I will post a link to that as well. But yeah, then when it comes, I got another super chat. AI and tech broadly seems like a liability to me. China has already caused U.S. trillion in damage to cybercrime. Do you disagree? How is AI a liability? I don't like. It's just because you have more risk of cybercrime. But how about all the efficiencies in the economy that are gained from it overly drown out the cybercrime risk? So it's kind of I think just on a net, I think AI is a positive, if that helps answer your question. Do you think we should make college 3 if people get certain test scores? Well, I think the universities, if they want the most talented people, they can offer them full ride scholarships. That already happens. So, like, I don't think you need to have some government mandate to do that. And yeah, here is the link to the full tour. If you're stuck on an island and get one source of news, what is it? I'd probably have to go with the Wall Street Journal if I had to just pick or one source, because I trust financial news more than like political news necessarily. But if you count like a whole intersocial media platform, I get like everybody posting everything on X, that would probably be the best, but that's kind of a cheating answer. But if it's a single publication, it's probably going to have to be the journal. You have an opinion on the sovereign individual? Yeah, it's a good book. I think a lot of things are right, a lot of things are wrong. I might do a book review about it in the future. Um, so yeah, I always recommend the sovereign individual for people who want to have an idea of what techno-futurism might look like, because it was kind of semi-prophetic in a lot of way. Will AI bullying take over cyberbullying? Well, AI bullying, I think, would be a type of cyberbullying, just automated cyberbullying. What do you think of Scott Galloway's proposal, like decreasing tuition 2% a year and increasing enrollment by 6% a year? I mean, I think that tuition will decrease just as market forces. Like, if you want to decrease tuition, just get rid of the guarantee for government student loans. Banks won't lend to students who don't have productive majors or don't have family who will collateralize it. So college prices will have to go down as a market response. I do agree with the enrollment increases, though, particularly for elite universities. Like, you know how many perfect score SAT people are rejected from Ivy League right now? It's not like you'd be diluting it that much if you doubled the class sizes over a 10-year period. I think there's a lot more room. I'm in general favor of increasing access, but not lowering the standards. Like, everybody should have a shot to move into the elites, but don't lower the bars because everybody feels like they're entitled to get there. Why would anybody want to be an employee in a country that enforces maximum shareholder profits? Best to be a shareholder. Well, you need to make money to become a shareholder. So you have to start. Being an employee is just the start, is the starting rung to the capitalist ladder in a way. Like, you need to learn skills. You need to gain experience working for somebody else and learn how the business world works and get initial capital that you can save and invest, whether it's starting your own business or buying shares and other things. So yeah, that's will people on the far right stop caring about politics once Trump is out of the picture because it won't be as exciting? No. I think Trump kind of helped the right develop a backbone to a certain degree, and I think those people won't be going away. I think what will cause people to stop caring about politics is a better economy. And I talked about this in my populism video. If like we had a 1990s level economy where you had growth and widely distributed growth and low deficit spending, people will stop caring about politics. Like back in the 90s when I was a kid, people complained that the Republicans and the Democrats are basically the same. And now we have the opposite complaint that they're so polarized and so different that like there's nobody who's sane and centrist. So if you want more stable, moderate politics, we need to fix the economic structural issues that are causing the populism. Yeah. Let's see. Who do you think the 2028 election will be? I think it'll be Newsom versus AOC. If I had not Newsom versus AOC, sorry, Vance versus AOC. I think the Democratic primary would be Newsom versus AOC, and I think AOC will squeak one out. So Vance versus Cortez, 28 is my prediction as of now, but that could change a lot. Yeah. Should the USA disincentivize financial careers? I mean, no, I don't think really the government should be manipulating who should do what careers. I don't think they should be subsidizing careers or disincentivizing careers. The market should sort that out. Yeah, I do think they will, because she is kind of the poster child for what it means to be a modern Democrat. And she can pivot away from a lot of the woke social issues and focus solely like on her socialist credentials, like on UBI and redistributionist economics, which I think would be attractive to a lot of people. And she's young, and usually people like to elect a person who's the opposite of the previous president in terms of personality and vibes. And I don't think you get much more opposite than old and brash and popular and like Trump and deregulatory hands-off guy with somebody like AOC who's young and is anti-business. Like replace the old businessman with a young female like regis like professional socialist politician. Like that's kind of the American voter is manic in that way. Uh, do you think SpaceX or OpenAI would be overvalued investments in the public? I mean, yeah, because they trade on the pub the they trade basically on like the cult of personality of the founders and hype of the technology. Where did I go to university? I went to UC Santa Barbara. A great place to go to school. Do you think finance is valuable? It's very valuable. It decides where capital flows, and capital is the lifeblood of the economy. So, finance is basically deciding um, what assets are going to be invested in, what is going to be produced. Like, if you don't have money, you're not going to get anywhere. And man, this is like the most rapid fire questions I've ever got for a live stream. You guys are like pouring it in. Um, so it's been great. But yeah, let me see if there's any other. Did I miss any questions before I close things off? Will AI replace capitalism and techno-feudalism? I mean, it's possible, but it can also break techno-feudalism. It could be like the Renaissance. We might already be in techno-feudalism. I don't know if you're familiar with Yanis Varoufakis, but he does a lot of interesting commentary about this. I may have the very opposite views on him on politics, but I think he is somebody who, even though he has a more Marxist perspective, I think he is very interesting. And I recommend reading his book, Adults in the Room, about the Greek debt crisis. Would you consider posting a poll on who your audience would like to see you do collab videos with? I'm curious what you'd like to see. I've done like a post about it, but I like for polls, you only have 4 choices. So I need to narrow it down to the top 4 who I'd consider. And I've already have a few in the pipeline. And you'll see, I think starting as early as next week. I think you might be surprised at who it is. But yeah. That's my answer to that question. And then this other one is, how can you become elite unless your parents are shareholder? I despise shareholder capitalism. You have to create enough value that you, as a business owner, that you generate enough revenue that you can break out. Like there's plenty of people who move up in the elite through entrepreneurship, or you have good enough office politics skills or politics skills that you get elected to high office or move up high into the C-suite level of a major corporation or NGO. Yeah, you can do it. It's just which way you do it really depends on your personality preference. Should they ban employers from owning employee side project IP? If you use the resources of the company, it makes sense that they would want to claim at it. And you shouldn't be, but like the thing is that if you make it on your own with your own resources, then no. Like that's not fair. If you're not using company resources or not doing it as part of a project the company assigns you, you should be able to keep any IP you want. If there are 10 geniuses from emerging market countries and 10 average Americans all vying for the same position at one American university, who would you pick? And I have to pick 10. What if I did 7 and 3? That's that might be. I do 7 from the emerging markets and 3 Americans, or 8 and 2. I think that you should allow the talent from other countries because there's other universities. It's not like that the average American can go to. But like I think you want the best talent in the country. If you were to guess, is most new money due to luck or merit? I think most of it is due to merit, but luck does play a role, especially like at the billionaire level. The higher you get, the more luck based it is, honestly. Like the difference between Mark Zuckerberg and a guy who sells his company for 100 million is probably more luck based than the difference between a middle class person, somebody who gets to 100 million. Are you collaborating with What If Alt Hist? As of now, no, but I would be open to it. I think a debate between us would be great. Um, yeah. Would you support a policy to exempt direct labor costs from income and payroll taxes? Um, I mean, what do you mean from corporate income taxes or individual? Um, I'm like, yeah, I mean, for employees, like self-employed people already kind of can do some of that, but I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not going to get into details on that. Is it true that there are currently not enough opportunities for capital to be deployed? Um, yeah, I mean, if that, I don't, it's a, like, you will tell if there's not enough opportunities if interest rates went to zero. I mean, but not if the market did, not the Fed. Like the interest rates are the price of money, and the higher interest rates means that there is more opportunity than um, money available to deploy, and vice versa. When you have loose money supply and you have more money than opportunities, you have lower interest rates. So look at interest rates. That's kind of the pricing power for that. Um, yeah. If AOC starts taxing unrealized gains, will you cry? I mean, I've done a video criticizing unrealized gains. Um, I might have to consider like my options. Let's just say that. What cities in the USA are on the rise and what are decaying? Um, I think cities on the rise: Miami, Florida; Tampa, Florida; Austin, Texas; Dallas are all on the rise. Um, Atlanta, Columbus, Ohio, basically Nashville, Charlotte, basically places where you have the highest incomes relative to cost of living. Um, I guess Detroit is kind of on a rebound from the bottom, but I think the upper Midwest has a lot of potential. And I think if Chicago had halfway decent leadership in Philadelphia, there's our cities that might be bottoming out and turning around. Places on the decline, um, the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area particularly. Um, I would say if Boston is at risk of decline, not currently, but it might turn the corner if college education becomes less important. Los Angeles, San Diego, um, what are also at risk. Um, I think that there's not really any cities that are just straight up. Memphis, Tennessee has been in decline for a while. Um, St. Louis is another city that's been in decline for a while. Um, and the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, I would say is a metro area that is kind of fading right now. Um, DC could potentially be on the decline if Doge is effective. Baltimore has been on the decline for a long time. Um, But yeah, other cities on the rise: Charleston, South Carolina, um, Savannah, Georgia. I would include on cities on the rise. Um, I would say there's certain places that are flatlining, like Orange County, California, which was one of the more rapidly bull areas for 50 years, is kind of stabilizing now. Um, I think California can turn around as a whole, though. I'm bullish still long term for California, but it's going to go through some pains when they realign. But I think the cities that have the most potential to turn around that aren't already booming are Chicago and Philadelphia. Um, yeah. So what do the cities have in common? Like the ones in decline or the ones on the rise? The ones on the rise have in common of high wages relative to cost of living and young people moving there, and have relatively high educated populations. Um, the cities in decline they have in common is old demographics, very sclerotic regulatory policies, high cost of living. Yeah, that's generally, or they have a core, or they're overly exposed to one industry. Like the cities that are the most decline right now are the ones that are like Memphis was overly exposed to like Mississippi River trading and the cotton market, and so that's why they've gotten hit. The Bay Area because they're overexposed to software. Detroit overexposed to heavy industry. Yeah, and or they have bad policies on like public safety and regulation and other stuff like that. Um, like if oil becomes less important, Houston could potentially be a city on decline. But I think it's stable now in my outlook. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. How would do you think that developing countries, especially the Philippines, will escape from the middle income trap? Um, So it depends. Like it takes a different set of policies to move out of the middle income trap into developed status, and it takes a lot of things that are like hard, like cultural issues to resolve. Like I thought certain countries would have made it out by now that haven't, but I need to do a lot more thought and deep dive on which countries I think could get out and which ones cannot. Thoughts on the Texas Stock Exchange? I don't really know enough about the Texas Stock Exchange to really have any strong opinions on it. Um, so yeah, and DC is another example of city in decline because it's government. It's too concentrated in one industry, and their industry is government. So if you want a dynamic city, it needs to be economically diversified. Um, so yeah, West Virginia, another example. Coal, like the under diversified works on the upside and probably has growth work better in the short term, but like in terms of like a community is different than a company. Like a business should be more concentrated because you invest in that business for it to do that one thing very well. And if you don't want a business, you always sell the stock or a business can like restructure or something. Whereas if you're a city, people build their livelihoods there. They buy houses, they live there, and like there's a whole community that is reliant on a certain industry doing well, and it's hard for all those people just to move out to someplace else when the industry declines. Like, so yeah, Ferrari or Lamborghini. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't really think I'd ever buy one of those cars, like just because I just my frugality would just not let. I'd rather spend the luxury money on a fancy house, personally. Um, but if I had to choose between one of those two, yeah, I'd probably say the Ferrari, but I think they're both cool cars, but I just don't think I would ever really buy them. What factors would be housing affordable again? Demographics, like just more supply, like basically population going down or growing slower than housing construction, um, housing policy and regulations, and more people spreading out to new cities. Will you get the Neuralink? No, I don't really like the idea of sticking a microchip in my brain. It's not appealing to me. Um, what? Oh yeah, well, like the- um, that's a good point on the Lambo thing. Like, I don't really want Ferrari to decide how I drive my own car. That is a good point. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my takes on that. Um, yeah, Nashville's changed a lot. And speaking of Nashville, I'm having a meetup in Nashville on July 2nd. So I'd love to see all you guys there. It's kind of a last minute addition because I have personal reasons to be in that part of the country. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you all there as like a pre 4th of July type party, I guess, um, in Nashville. This will be the second time I've been to Nashville. Yeah, yeah, I've been once before. I went for Halloween a few years ago. I had a good friend of mine who had moved there with his wife, and I had a few other friends who were in town for other reasons. So it was kind of like a reunion for a lot of my old friends. We happened to do it in Nashville. And I had an uncle who used to live there, but he moved back to California um, for climate reasons. But yeah, so Nashville is a yeah, it's a fun city, but I don't think I'd live there. It's not my cup of tea. Um, yeah, I think with that, I am. I don't know, let me think if there's any more questions. I think I went way over the 15-minute time because you guys flooded me. So, but I'm surprised how long I've gone with this live stream. But I think I will keep going until I run out of things to questions to ask or eat dinner. But I'm not graduated from UCSB. I mean, maybe you'd find it if you stuck me hard enough. But I want to, again, maybe I might be sharing too much personal information. How can a 20-something earning average income buy in Orange County? Well, you can't. You just buy in your 30s or your 40s, or if you like, it doesn't make sense to buy in Orange County. Like the rents versus income ratio is out of whack. And so if you're buying a house, it's more as a trophy asset than an investment. Yeah. How disruptive do you think AI will be on the finance industry? What specific sub industries have you ever followed Mark Meldrum? No, I've never heard of him. I think AI will cut a lot of the junior research analysts out. Like hedge funds will probably just be portfolio managers and maybe one analyst instead of a whole team. I think a lot of back office and compliance could be automated or done a lot smoother. And yeah, I think that's what kind of the role is. It's going to allow to do things with less headcount, more of the same or better quality service with less headcount. Like I've used some AI and some technological automation stuff to make my business run a lot more efficient than I would otherwise. If I didn't, I wouldn't be able to even operate because my company is too small to hire the amount of people I would have needed to a generation ago. What finance stuff did you do before current business? I worked as a research analyst primarily, and a portfolio manager at hedge funds and other investment management firms. But yeah, most of my career is spent as a buy-side research analyst. Yeah. And also with the old money, new money cities, the next regions I want to do for geography of wealth, I'm going to do a series on geography of wealth vacation destinations this summer. But after that, the ones I'm looking to do are Europe and the Southeast USA. So I'm not as familiar with those regions, like in terms of like the neighborhood by neighborhood basis are the ones that I've done videos on. So I could use your guys' help when it comes to certain metro areas, like particularly like in the Southeast USA, Switzerland, Italy, and France and Germany, and Spain too. Deflation, disinflation, or inflation? Guess. Right now, we are going through disinflation. If that's the answer of what your question is. So where do you see those entry level positions going? Where will the new PMs come from? Yeah, that's kind of a new dilemma. I mean, I think a lot of this is solved by just having lower birth rates in the smaller generation and the succeeding generation being smaller than the last one. But yeah, I think AI is really a risk of destroying talent pipeline. I don't really know how we're going to solve that. Good question. Yeah. Do you think AI will create further separation between entry level and top level executives? Yeah, because they'll simply just be less entry level people and their jobs are more likely to be commoditized. Is it true the sell side is more prestigious? No. It's a personality preference. The sell side is generally again, they're just very different roles. I don't think anyone is more prestigious. Like the famous banks tend to be sell side, but there's plenty of prestigious hedge funds and private equity firms and other things like that. I don't have any comments about Vegas. How is the current condition made job searching for new grads harder? Well, maybe people are using an AI or AI software agents instead of hiring somebody. And that marginal decision is what makes it harder. Any thoughts on generational wealth being squandered in free generations? It does happen a lot. Like that's what makes the old money families unique is they are able to. That's why my definition of old money is 4 generations plus, because not that many people make it. Like again, there's reasons I mentioned earlier, like estate issues, divorces, irresponsible family members, being overly invested in one industry or company and that going bad. It's very difficult for what's it called? For money to last more than 3 generations. It takes really good planning and strategy and foresight and stable families. Like maybe that's why a lot of the old money is against traditional families, whether the nuclear family, the corporate family, or um, because breaking down families makes it harder to accumulate wealth. Which one is easier to get into, the buy side or the sell side? I mean, I was looking for jobs over a decade ago, so I'm not really the one to ask. Um, so, how would you utilize your EU passport to maximize your labor value? Well, the way you do that is you try to find a job that is transatlantic, and you can utilize your connections in both places. Um, or work for an American or the European branch or of like of an American company or something like that. Um, I don't know why. Why do you think drama and gossip dictate the upper classes of America? I don't know if that's necessarily true. Um, yeah, I mean, and in terms of age, like I have subscribers and fans that are in their 80s, so it's like anywhere from like the youngest person who I know who watches my channel is probably like teens, and then the oldest is like in their 80s. So like in terms of the meetups, the oldest person to show up in the meetup is like outside of the ones in like local community, people I know personally, was in his 50s, and the youngest was 19. So it's actually a pretty broad age cohort, but I think like the average age really for my audience is probably somewhere between 25 to 35, which is actually a pretty old audience for YouTube. So, yeah. Do you think crypto will ever replace the US dollar? No, unless if they create a crypto that's backed by gold or real estate or some hard asset. Do you think wealth inequality is a natural consequences of power laws? Yes, I think it is. I think if you look at the Pareto distribution, what it would tell you, um, basically, the Pareto distribution would imply that the top 1% would get 50% of the assets, and that is actually kind of in line with the real world. So yeah, I think a lot of it is simply a Pareto distribution, and I don't think inequality is fundamentally a bad thing. Here's my video about the Pareto principle if you want to know more details about that, and on my thoughts on inequality and why I don't think inequality is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's more just um, a symptom more than a cause if there's any troublesome, but it's not something that needs to be eradicated. Here's my video on inequality. You try to model yourself any other particular asset managers. Yeah, I try to incorporate some parts of other fund managers. Like I think one guy whose philosophy I try to incorporate the closest to, even though I have a lot of differences between him and Will, is Stan Druckenmiller. If you're not familiar with him, he was one of Soros's early apprentices who built a very successful hedge fund career on his own and is one of the greatest investors of all time and keeps a relatively low profile. So yeah, I mean, and there's others too. Like, but yeah, I think he's probably the one that's the closest to a lot of my investment philosophy. Um, have you ever third opinion about the Kelly criterion? Yeah, I've looked into it. Um, yeah, I think there is something to it, but it's been a while. Um, And yeah, there should be other ways to manage envy. Like that's the reason why that envy is one of the seven deadly sins, and why not coveting other people's assets is a one of the 10 commandments. Like so, yeah, that would be my take on envy. Like the problem with the declining Christianity is that there is less of a social impulse to fight against envy. So yeah. Is there age limits and floors to your meetups? Um, I mean, if you're under 18, you should probably go with your parents. That's really all I'm saying. Some of them, like, I mean, yeah, and then that's my only really rule in terms about age. Um, does Pareto principle apply to investments? 20% investment? Yeah, it does. Watch the video on Pareto principle. I show the investments is one of the examples I show in the like it applies to online dating statistics. It applies to point score in the NBA. It applies to investments. It applies to wealth concentration and income. It's kind of scary. Um, so yeah. Is there a way to value mandatory tertiary education for lower class people? Would it help them more socially mobile? I don't really think it should be mandatory, but yeah, you should allow access to people through just having more scholarships or using um, policy changes to make college affordable by getting rid of the things artificially increasing the costs, like student loans. Um, was the country the best to have a second home or passport? It's probably Switzerland. And if you can't get a Swiss passport, it's probably like either Singapore or Uruguay or the Cayman Islands. Um, do you have any thoughts on the Koch brothers and how much influence they've had? I read an interesting book called Dark Money about them. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they're a big donor family. There are some things that they've done that maybe not on the up and up, but who knows? Like, I don't really have a strong feeling about them one or another. I mean, I generally have sympathetic toward libertarian causes. So, at least on economics, libertarian causes. So I don't really think they're inherently a bad force, but yeah, um, I'm just neutral about them. And thoughts on people who sell courses on how to build some sort of business. Just look at their track record, see if they've done it themselves. Like if you're selling a course about how to sell a course, that's kind of there's kind of a circular logic problem. But I don't really have that much thoughts on it. Um, yeah, but I think it's 7:30 now. I gotta get going, but thank you guys all for watching. And I enjoyed doing this live stream. And I'm gonna do another one when we break 50,000. And I might do another one about economic booms later in June as well as that series is coming out. Yeah, support us by joining subscribing to the Substack. Um, check out the members if you think that's interesting. Come to one of our events on the tour, or if you need specific advice or consulting, feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you for watching, everybody, and have a good night.